Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the Animarium Sage Ranger, the King of Will. D. Zords Naruto x Princess Shayla the 10th Taylor Earhardt Power Rangers. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Dimensional Rift. The forest surrounding Konoha breathed with ancient chakra, invisible currents flowing between massive trees that had witnessed generations of shinobi come and go. Naruto Uzumaki sat motionless atop a moss-covered boulder, eyes closed in perfect stillness, orange pigmentation slowly spreading around his eyelids. Nature energy flowed into him, merging with his own substantial reserves as his consciousness expanded outward in rippling waves. Something was different today. 3 years after the Fourth Great Ninja War, peace had settled across the 5 great nations. At 20, Naruto had grown into his potential, tall and broad-shouldered, his face losing its boyish roundness while retaining that irrepressible spark that defined him. His sage training had deepened, refined by countless hours of meditation and practice. As his awareness stretched beyond normal limits, he detected an anomaly, a ripple in the fabric of nature energy 15 kilometers northwest. Not threatening, but definitely not natural. The disturbance pulsed with a rhythm reminiscent of a heartbeat, drawing his curiosity like a beacon. "What the hell is that?" he murmured, orange-rimmed eyes opening to stare in the direction of the disturbance. Naruto leapt from the boulder, landing silently despite his considerable height. He adjusted his black and orange jacket, a more mature version of his Genin Days outfit, and checked the specialized kunai holster at his thigh. Years of experience had taught him never to investigate anything unusual without preparation. The forest blurred around him as he moved with practiced efficiency, each bound carrying him 30 meters through the canopy. Wildlife scattered at his approach then quickly resumed their activities. They recognized him now as a sage, one who communicated with nature rather than disturbing it. The anomaly grew stronger as he approached, manifesting as a subtle distortion in the air, like heat rising from summer-baked earth. Except it wasn't hot. If anything, the area felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Naruto slowed his approach, creating 3 shadow clones with out hand signs, a skill he'd perfected years ago. The clones spread out, approaching from different angles while maintaining sage mode. "Boss," one clone called after a minute of observation. "It's expanding." He was right. The distortion had doubled in size since Naruto's arrival, from roughly the diameter of a dinner plate to that of a wagon wheel. Golden light shimmered at its edges, reminiscent of the chakra Naruto accessed in his highest forms, yet distinctly different. The energy signature felt ancient, primal, connected to natural forces but not of the shinobi world he knew. "I should probably get Kakashi-sensei or Sakura," Naruto muttered, yet made no move to retreat. Something about this phenomenon called to him specifically, resonating with the power sealed in his abdomen. Kurama, the 9-tailed fox, stirred within his mindscape. "This energy, I've felt it before, long ago," the Biju's deep voice rumbled through Naruto's consciousness. "What is it?" Naruto asked, maintaining his external vigilance while conversing internally. "I'm not certain. It predates even my creation by the Sage of 6 Paths. But it feels kindred, somehow. Connected to natural energy, but from somewhere else." That decided it. If this mysterious phenomenon had connections to both Sage Chakra and the Biju, investigating fell squarely within Naruto's expertise. He dismissed his clones, absorbing their observations, then cautiously stepped forward. The distortion responded to his proximity, pulsating more rapidly. Tendrils of golden light reached toward him like curious fingers, causing the seal on his abdomen to warm. Not painfully, but noticeably. "Well, that's definitely not normal," Naruto observed dryly, lifting his shirt to examine the seal. The intricate pattern glowed faintly, resonating with the strange energy before him. "What do you think, Kurama?" "I think you're about to do something reckless," the fox replied, his tone mixing resignation with curiosity. Naruto grinned. "You know me too well." Taking a deep breath, he extended his hand toward the distortion. The moment his fingertips made contact, the anomaly expanded explosively, engulfing him in golden light. A sensation of falling through endless space seized him, accompanied by a rushing sound like 1,000 waterfalls. His body felt simultaneously weightless and impossibly heavy, stretched and compressed in dimensions he couldn't comprehend. Then, abruptly, solid ground materialized beneath his feet. Naruto staggered, disoriented but instinctively maintaining his balance. Sage chakra he'd been channeling fluctuated wildly before stabilizing into new patterns, as though adjusting to fundamentally different natural laws. Blinking rapidly to clear his vision, Naruto found himself standing in a forest unlike any he'd ever seen. The trees reached impossible heights, their ancient trunks wider than Konoha's buildings. Sunlight filtered through a canopy hundreds of meters overhead, casting dappled patterns on lush undergrowth. Flowers in colors he couldn't name bloomed everywhere, their perfume sweet and intoxicating. But most striking was the ambient energy saturating everything. It wasn't chakra, not exactly, yet it flowed through all living things here much the same way. Whatever this energy was, it recognized him, responding to his presence like a curious animal. Definitely not in Konoha anymore, Naruto muttered, his senses extending outward. No human presence nearby, but something else, something massive moving through the forest perhaps a kilometer away. Multiple somethings, in fact, with energy signatures more potent than most summoning animals. A sudden shift in the atmosphere made him spin around, kunai materializing in his hand from ingrained reflex. The air shimmered 20 paces away, coalescing into the form of a woman unlike any Naruto had encountered. She appeared to be in her mid-20s, with fair skin and delicate features. Framed by flowing brown hair adorned with small white flowers. Her dress was white and flowing, reminiscent of priestesses, garments from ancient legends. A golden circlet rested on her brow, catching sunlight in mesmerizing patterns. But most captivating were her eyes, deep pools of wisdom that suggested she had witnessed centuries pass. The woman studied him with surprised recognition, as though encountering an old friend in an unexpected place. When she spoke, her voice carried musical qualities that reminded Naruto of wind chimes. "A visitor from beyond," she said softly. "How extraordinary. The Animarium hasn't received an outsider in 3,000 years. Naruto lowered his kunai but remained alert. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki, from Konohagakure. I didn't exactly plan to visit, wherever this is. The Animarium," she replied, taking a graceful step forward. A sacred realm separated from the world below, home to the wild Zords and last bastion against the forces of corruption. Her head tilted slightly as she studied him more intently. "I am Princess Shayla, guardian of this place. Your energy signature, it's unlike anything I've encountered, yet somehow familiar." Naruto felt Kurama stir again within him. She's not human, not entirely. Her life force is bound to this place. "I'm a shinobi," Naruto explained, deciding that honesty was the best approach. "And I see a powerful entity called the nine-tailed fox inside me. That might be what you're sensing." Princess Shayla's eyes widened. "A guardian spirit shares your form. Then you're a ranger of your world." Before Naruto could respond, she continued, "The energy gate hasn't opened in millennia. Your arrival must hold significant meaning." A distant roar interrupted their conversation, causing birds to take flight throughout the forest. Princess Shayla turned toward the sound, concern crossing her features. "The red lion is approaching," she said. "He rarely leaves his mountain unless." She glanced back at Naruto with renewed curiosity. "Unless something of great importance demands his attention." "Is that bad?" Naruto asked, scanning the tree line where the roar had originated. "Not bad," Princess Shayla answered. "But potentially world-changing." The thunderous sound of massive paws striking earth grew louder, accompanied by the cracking of branches as something enormous moved through the forest. Naruto widened his stance, preparing for whatever might emerge, though Princess Shayla's calm demeanor suggested no immediate danger. What burst from the tree line stole Naruto's breath. A lion larger than any summoning animal he'd encountered, its body gleaming like polished metal in shades of red and silver. Its eyes glowed with intelligence far beyond any beast, focusing immediately on Naruto with penetrating intensity. Most striking was the energy emanating from it, pure, ancient, and somehow similar to the natural energy Naruto channeled in sage mode. "The Red Lion Wild Zord," Princess Shayla introduced with reverent tones. "Leader of the Wild Zords and protector of the Animarium." The massive lion approached slowly, each step deliberate. When it stood merely 10 paces away, it lowered its head to study Naruto at eye level, a gesture that would have been threatening if not for the curious tilt of its massive head. "He's examining your energy signature," Princess Shayla explained. "Wild Zords can sense the true nature of beings they encounter." Naruto stood his ground, meeting the lion's gaze without fear but with appropriate respect. Something told him this Cr. Eacher deserved the same deference he'd show to the toads of Mount Myoboku. "I mean no harm to your home," Naruto addressed the lion directly. "I'm just trying to figure out how I got here and what it means." The red lion's response wasn't verbal but unmistakable. It leaned forward, touching its enormous muzzle to Naruto's chest, directly over the seal containing Kurama. Immediately, golden light erupted between them, energy flowing in currents around Naruto's body. The seal on his abdomen burned intensely, not painfully but transformatively, as though ancient patterns were being rewritten. "This power," Kurama sounded genuinely astonished within Naruto's mindscape. "It's resonating with my own, changing how our energies interact." Princess Shayla gasped, moving forward with newfound urgency. "The blessing of the king," she whispered. "I've only read about this in the ancient texts." The light faded gradually, leaving Naruto breathless but invigorated. His senses had sharpened dramatically. His awareness of the surrounding environment expanded beyond even what Sage Mode typically provided. He could feel every wild Zord in the forest, sense their individual natures and emotions as clearly as if they were extensions of himself. The red lion stepped back, regarding Naruto with what could only be described as satisfaction before letting out a roar that seemed to shake the very foundation of the Animarium. In the distance, answering calls echoed from throughout the realm, a communication network spanning the entire mysterious world. "What just happened?" Naruto asked, examining his hands where golden energy still sparked occasionally across his skin. Princess Shayla knelt in a fluid motion, touching the ground with her palm. The earth responded, glowing soft. Lee beneath her fingers as images formed, ancient symbols swirling into legible patterns. "The prophecy manifests," she murmured, almost to herself. "When worlds stand threatened by shadows that bridge dimensions, a king shall arise bearing the mark of the spiral sun and the blessing of 9 spirits. His coming heralds the rebirth of ancient pacts and the renewal of guardianship across realms." She looked up at Naruto, her expression transformed by wonder and sudden recognition. "The spiral mark upon your abdomen. I thought it merely a containment seal for your guardian spirit, but it's the spiral sun of the prophecy. And you contain 9 spirits in one." "Well, just one these days," Naruto clarified, rubbing the back of his head. "During the war, I had connections to all 9 Biju, but now it's just Kurama, the 9 tails." "9 tails," Princess Shayla repeated, rising gracefully. 9 aspects of one being. The prophecy speaks of 9 spirits united, not necessarily 9 separate entities." She approached him with newfound reverence. "The red lion has recognized you, Naruto Uzumaki. Something no outsider has ever achieved." The moment was broken by a new sound, the distinctive whirring of mechanical wings. Naruto glanced upward to see a yellow mechanical eagle descending rapidly through the canopy. As it approached ground level, its form shimmered and transformed. Where the eagle had been, a woman now stood, dressed in a black and yellow jacket over practical clothing suited for combat. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail, and her expression conveyed immediate suspicion. "Princess Shayla," the newcomer addressed, her voice carrying military crispness while her eyes remained fixed on Naruto. "The dear Zord alerted me to an intruder." Her hand moved to what appeared to be a communication device at her belt. "Who is he, and how did he breach our defenses?" Princess Shayla turned with a serene smile. "Taylor, your vigilance is commendable as always. This is Naruto Uzumaki, a visitor from another dimension. And according to ancient prophecy, possibly the one who will help us face the growing darkness." Taylor's posture remained rigid with skepticism. "Another dimension? Princess, with all due respect, we can't just trust someone who appears out of nowhere because of some ancient text." Her gaze hardened as she assessed Naruto with tactical precision. For all we know, he could be an orc in disguise, testing a new infiltration method. Naruto recognized the look. He'd seen it countless times from shinobi encountering potential threats. The woman was a warrior, trained to protect, and currently viewing him as a security risk. Rather than taking offense, he respected her caution. I understand your concern, he addressed her directly, keeping his hands visible and his posture non-threatening despite his considerable height advantage. In your position, I'd be suspicious too. Where I come from, we have protocols for unexpected visitors that probably aren't that different from yours. Taylor seemed momentarily taken aback by his reasonable response but quickly recovered. And where exactly do you come from? Princess Shayla mentioned another dimension. But that sounds convenient for someone who doesn't want their background checked. Kanahagakure, the village hidden in the leaves. I'm a shinobi, what you might call a ninja. Though that term has different connotations in my world. Naruto decided transparency would serve better than evasion. I was training in sage mode, a technique that lets me connect with nature. Energy, when I discovered a distortion that brought me here. The Red Lion, who had remained silently observant, suddenly moved forward, positioning himself between Naruto and Taylor. Not aggressively, but in a manner that clearly indicated protection of Naruto. Taylor's eyes widened. Red Lion, what are you doing? Her voice held genuine confusion. You're defending him. Princess Shayla stepped forward, not merely defending Taylor. The Red Lion has given Naruto his blessing, the blessing of the king. Something not bestowed since the original wild force was established. That's impossible, Taylor replied, though uncertainty had crept into her voice. The prophecy said the king of wild Zords would only appear in the world's greatest time of need, when threats from beyond our understanding emerged. Perhaps such a time approaches, Princess Shayla suggested gently. The corruption we've been fighting has been changing, evolving in ways our records don't account for. And now, a visitor arrives from another dimension with energy that resonates with the wild Zords themselves. Taylor's tactical mind visibly processed this information, reassessing Naruto with new considerations. If, and I emphasize if, what you're saying is true, then he should be able to demonstrate this connection. The blessing of the king isn't just a title, it's a tangible power. I'm still figuring out what happened myself, Naruto admitted, but I can tell you that something changed when the Red Lion touched me. I can sense every wild Zord in this forest now, feel their emotions, almost understand their thoughts. He paused, focusing on the new awareness flowing through him. There's a falcon circling above us right now, concerned about the gathering. 2 buffalo grazing about 3 kilometers east, unbothered. And something serpentine moving through water to the north, agitated about something unrelated to us. Taylor's expression shifted to grudging impression. The falcon, bison, and serpent Zords. Accurately described, including their current states. She relaxed her stance slightly. Either you're exactly what the princess believes, or you're the most sophisticated spy we've ever encountered. I've been called many things, but sophisticated isn't usually one of them, Naruto replied with a hint of his characteristic grin. Princess Shayla placed a gentle hand on Taylor's shoulder. The wild Zords recognize their own, Taylor. The Red Lion's judgment has never led us astray. After a moment of consideration, Taylor nodded curtly. Fine, I'll withhold final judgment until we understand more. She fixed Naruto with a direct stare. But I'll be watching you closely. If this is some elaborate deception, you won't get far. Fair enough, Naruto acknowledged. He earned the trust of more difficult allies during the war. A distant rumble interrupted their conversation, different from any wild Zord vocalization. This sound carried malevolent undertones, like thunder tainted by something unnatural. Princess Shayla's expression immediately shifted to concern. That came from the border regions, she said, looking to Taylor. The southeastern quadrant, where we detected anomalies last week. Taylor confirmed, professional focus instantly returning. She touched her communication device. Cole, Max, Danny, Alyssa, southeastern border, possible org activity. I'm en route with Princess Shayla. She paused, glancing at Naruto with clear reluctance before adding, and we have a situation you should be aware of. She returned her attention to Princess Shayla. Princess, you should return to the temple while we investigate. I need to see this myself, Taylor, Princess Shayla replied with surprising firmness. Especially if it relates to our visitor's arrival. Taylor looked ready to protest but ultimately nodded. Stay behind us, then. Her gaze shifted to Naruto. I suppose you're coming too. If something dangerous is happening, I can help, Naruto stated simply. It wasn't bravado, just a factual assessment from someone who had faced world-ending threats. We'll see, Taylor replied noncommittally. She touched her device again, causing a yellow crystal to materialize in her hand. Wild access, she called out, triggering a transformation that surrounded her body with yellow energy before solidifying into a form-fitting yellow and white uniform with a helmet bearing eagle-like features. Naruto observed with interest. The transformation reminded him somewhat of chakra modes, though the mechanism seemed entirely different. You can fly, he asked, noting the wing-like elements of her uniform. Among other things, she answered, her voice slightly altered by the helmet. Princess, I'll carry you. Our visitor will have to find his own way to keep up. Naruto smiled. Not a problem. He formed a familiar cross-shaped hand sign, and instantly 10 perfect copies of himself appeared in puffs of smoke, surrounding the original. Both Taylor and Princess Shayla startled at the sudden multiplication. Shadow clone technique, Naruto explained casually. One of my specialties. Impossible, Taylor muttered. Those are solid duplicates, not illusions. Each with about 1/10 of my chakra, my energy, Naruto confirmed. They can act independently, fight, gather information. When they disperse, their experiences return to me. The Red Lion observed this demonstration with what appeared to be approval before turning toward the southeastern border. With a meaningful look back at Naruto, the massive Zord bounded forward with surprising speed for its size. He wants us to follow, Princess Shayla interpreted. Lead the way, Naruto gestured to Taylor. My clones and I will keep pace. Taylor seemed to reconsider her assessment of Naruto's capabilities but made no comment. Instead, she lifted Princess Shayla with practiced ease and launched into the air, assisted by technology or powers Naruto couldn't immediately identify. Naruto and his clones followed, leaping through the massive trees with the enhanced agility of Sage Mode. The Red Lion moved below, a crimson blur through the undergrowth, occasionally glancing back as if ensuring Naruto maintained pace. As they traveled, Naruto absorbed the extraordinary environment of the Animarium. The ecosystem functioned differently from anything in his world, with plants and animals existing in perfect harmony with the wild Zords. The energy flowing through everything connected in networks reminiscent of natural chakra but with distinctive patterns and purposes. After covering several kilometers, they approached a region where the lush forest thinned dramatically. The border between abundant life and concerning desolation was unnaturally sharp, as though an invisible line had been drawn. Beyond this boundary, vegetation turned sickly, and the ambient energy grew discordant. Taylor landed on a rocky outcropping overlooking the affected area, gently setting Princess Shayla down. Naruto and his clones arrived moments later, gathering around the perimeter to establish surveillance points. Below, in a shallow valley, dark purple mist oozed from what appeared to be a tear in reality itself, a jagged black opening hovering 2 meters above the ground. The mist spread outward, causing plants to wither upon contact. More disturbing were the figures moving through the haze, humanoid shapes composed of organic matter twisted into mockeries of natural form, adorned with horns and tusks that seemed randomly placed. Orbs, Taylor identified grimly. But something's different about them. They're more coordinated. And that portal, Princess Shayla added, her voice tight with concern. It's not a natural phenomenon of our world. Naruto dispersed most of his clones, keeping only 2 for strategic positioning. His sage-enhanced vision penetrated the mist, analyzing the portal's structure. That energy signature, it's similar to what brought me here. But corrupted somehow, twisted. The Red Lion growled low, communicating something that Naruto somehow understood despite the absence of words. Knowledge transferred directly to his consciousness. The Red Lion says this corruption began appearing recently, Naruto translated, surprising himself with the ease of interpretation. Small manifestations at first, but growing stronger and more frequent. The wild Zords sensed an outside influence but couldn't identify the source. Taylor turned sharply. You can understand him. Completely. Apparently, Naruto replied, equally surprised. Must be part of that blessing Princess Shayla mentioned. 4 more figures appeared at the edge of the outcropping, humans wearing ranger uniforms similar to Taylor's but in different colors: red, blue, black, and white. The one in red stepped forward. Taylor, we got your message, he began, then stopped abruptly upon noticing Naruto. Who's this? Long story, Cole, Taylor replied tersely. Short version. Visitor from another dimension, possible fulfillment of the king prophecy according to Princess Shayla and the Red Lion, potential ally or elaborate threat. I'm reserving judgment. Cole, the Red Ranger, seemed taken aback by this compressed explanation but recovered quickly. Oh. Okay, we'll deal with that after addressing whatever's happening down there. The Wit, E-Ranger, slimmer and clearly female, approached the edge for a better view. That portal doesn't match any previous org manifestations we've encountered. The energy pattern is completely different. Alyssa's right, the Black Ranger agreed, and those orgs are behaving strategically, positioning themselves like they're expecting something. Naruto's attention fixed on the portal itself. The jagged edges pulsated with sickly energy. But beneath the corruption, he recognized elements similar to the dimensional rift that had brought him to the Animarium. More concerning was what he sensed beyond it, a familiar malevolence he hadn't encountered in years. There's someone controlling this from the other side, Naruto stated with growing certainty. Someone from my world, I think. The energy signature has elements of corrupted chakra I've encountered before. Before anyone could respond, the portal expanded violently. The orgs below arranged themselves in ceremonial formation, raising clawed appendages toward the widening tier. From within the darkness, a pale hand emerged, followed by an arm clad in distinctively patterned robes. Naruto's blood ran cold with recognition. No way. A figure stepped through the portal with serpentine grace, tall and unnaturally slender with long black hair framing a paper-white face. Golden eyes with vertical pupils surveyed the Animarium with calculated interest. Orochimaru, Naruto hissed, instinctively dropping into a combat stance. The former Sanin's appearance had changed subtly, purple markings around his eyes had darkened and spread. And his skin seemed partially composed of scales in certain areas. More importantly, his chakra had transformed, intermingling with the same corrupt energy emanating from the orgs. Princess Shayla stepped back, visibly disturbed. That being carries both the corruption of orgs and something equally dark from your world. Orochimaru is a shinobi scientist obsessed with immortality and forbidden techniques. Naruto explained rapidly. He's betrayed our village multiple times, conducted human experiments, and developed techniques to transfer his consciousness between bodies. If he's here and connected to these orgs, we're dealing with something extremely dangerous. Below, Orochimaru surveyed his surroundings with clinical detachment before addressing the gathered orgs in a smooth, unsettling voice that carried clearly to the observation point. This dimension's energy will serve our purposes perfectly, he stated. Begin harvesting as planned. The merger of org essence with my defied cursed seal techniques has exceeded expectations. One org stepped forward, larger than the others with more humanoid features. When it spoke, its voice carried disturbing harmonics. Master G will be pleased with your contributions, Lord Orochimaru. The contamination spreads faster with your methods. Taylor turned to Naruto, suspicion temporarily overshadowed by tactical necessity. You know this enemy. What are his capabilities? Extensive and lethal, Naruto replied grimly. Mastery of thousands of jutsu, unprecedented knowledge of biological manipulation, snake summoning, near immortality through body transfer, and a genius-level intellect for strategy. If he's augmented himself with powers from your world, there's no telling what he's capable of now. Cole stepped forward. Then we move immediately, before he establishes a stronger foothold. He glanced at Naruto. If you're really what the princess believes you are, now's the time to prove it. Naruto nodded. NEL. Lingering tension with the Rangers temporarily set aside in the face of a common threat. I fought him before when I was just a genin, a junior ninja. I'm considerably stronger now. He formed a hand sign, creating 20 shadow clones that immediately spread out in tactical formation. Whoa, the Blue Ranger commented. That's definitely not an org ability. My team will approach from multiple angles, Naruto continued, slipping effortlessly into the strategic mindset honed through years of high-stakes combat. Your rangers have experience with these org creatures, so focus on them while my clones and I engage Orochimaru directly. Princess Shayla should remain at a safe distance. She appears to be a priority target based on how those orgs are positioning. Taylor seemed caught between Professional approval of his tactical assessment and lingering distrust. Your plan has merit, but remember, this is our world. Follow our lead if we call for a change in strategy. Fair enough, Naruto agreed readily. In battle, ego had no place. Ready when you are. The Red Ranger, Cole, nodded. Rangers, move out. The 5 Rangers leapt from the outcropping with enhanced agility, each drawing weapons as they descended toward the org gathering. Naruto's clones followed in synchronized patterns, while the original remained briefly with Princess Shayla. Stay hidden, he advised her. If I understand correctly, you're connected to this realm's well-being. We can't risk you being captured. Princess Shayla nodded gratefully. Be careful, Naruto Uzumaki. Orochimaru's presence here violates fundamental boundaries between dimensions. The consequences could extend far beyond what's immediately visible. Below, Orochimaru's head tilted slightly, the only indication he'd detected the approaching attack. His thin lips curved into a smile that held no warmth. Ah, the Guardians arrive, he observed to his org lieutenant. And with them, a most unexpected reunion. His gaze fixed dire, CTLY on Naruto's position despite the considerable distance. Naruto-kun, how fascinating to find you here. Naruto leapt down to join the Rangers, landing with practiced ease despite the 30-meter drop. Orochimaru, last I heard, you were supposedly reformed after the war. Looks like old habits die hard. The former Sannin chuckled, the sound reminiscent of dry scales sliding against each other. Reformed, perhaps, but scientific curiosity knows no moral boundaries. When I detected fluctuations in the dimensional barrier during experiments with natural energy, how could I resist investigating? He gestured to the corrupted landscape around them, and discovering an entire realm of untapped power and biological marvels. No scientist could turn away. The Rangers positioned themselves in combat formation, weapons ready. Cole stepped forward. Whatever you're planning ends now. This realm is protected. Orochimaru's eyes gleamed with amusement. Protected by children playing with powers they barely understand. His gaze returned to Naruto. Though you, Naruto-kun, have grown impressively. Your chakra has evolved in fascinating ways. Naruto didn't waste time on further dialogue. He signaled his clones, who immediately launched a coordinated attack from multiple angles, each wielding different Rasengan variations. Simultaneously, the Rangers charged the org forces, their weapons connecting with practiced precision. The battle erupted across the valley floor. The Rangers moved with impressive teamwork, each utilizing distinct fighting styles that complemented their teammates' approaches. Taylor's aerial maneuvers provided overhead coverage while the others engaged in direct combat. Their weapons channeled energy unlike anything in the shinobi world, yet Naruto recognized the fundamentals of effective squad tactics. His clones engaged Orochimaru in waves, forcing the Sannin to reveal his enhanced capabilities. The snake-like shinobi moved with unnatural fluidity, his body sometimes seeming to dissolve into purple mist before reforming elsewhere. When he counterattacked, it was with techniques that blended familiar jutsu with corrupted org energy. Your new powers won't save you, Naruto stated as he joined the direct assault, forming a massive Rasengan in his right hand while channeling Sage Chakra to enhance his perception. Whatever you're planning here stops now. Orochimaru's neck extended impossibly, his head weaving like a cobra preparing to strike. Always so righteous, Naruto-kun. Always seeing the world in such limiting terms of right and wrong. His tongue flicked out, tasting the air, but surely even you can appreciate the scientific marvel of dimensional convergence. Two worlds, each with unique energy systems, merging their potential. Naruto launched forward, his Rasengan aimed directly at Orochimaru's chest. The Sannin twisted unnaturally to avoid the impact, but one of Naruto's clones appeared behind him with perfect timing, landing a solid kick that sent the snake-like figure tumbling toward the Rangers' battle. The White Ranger, Alyssa, noticed the approaching threat and smoothly redirected her attack, her weapon transforming into a different configuration as she struck Orochimaru mid-recovery. The impact released a burst of white energy that momentarily disrupted the Sannin's form. His physical composition is unstable, Alyssa called out. He's partially transformed into an org state but hasn't fully integrated the energy patterns. Naruto processed this information instantly, adjusting his strategy. Rangers, Your weapons affect him differently than my techniques. Alternate attacks to prevent adaptation. Taylor, engaged with 3 orgs simultaneously, managed to dispatch them efficiently before responding. Taking tactical advice from a complete stranger. Not my usual style, but she executed a perfect aerial flip, bringing her eagle sword down on an org approaching Naruto from behind. I'll make an exception since you noticed that flanking maneuver before I mentioned it. Naruto grinned briefly at the reluctant acknowledgement before refocusing on Orochimaru, who had recovered and now stood at the portal's edge. Performing unfamiliar hand signs that combined shinobi techniques with movements Naruto didn't recognize. The Red Lion, who had remained observing from the ridgeline, suddenly roared with unmistakable warning. The sound resonated through Naruto's being, conveying urgent meaning. The portal must be sealed. The worlds cannot merge further. Understanding flooded Naruto's consciousness. The damage wasn't just to the Animarium, this convergence threatened both realms. If Orochimaru succeeded in whatever he was attempting, the consequences would cascade across dimensions. Princess Shayla's voice carried from her hidden position, enhanced somehow to reach them clearly despite the bottle's chaos. Naruto, the blessing of the king grants you authority over wild Zord energy. You must direct it to close the portal. Orochimaru's expression shifted to genuine surprise. The blessing of the king. How unexpected. His hands moved faster, the portal pulsating more violently. All the more reason to accelerate our timeline. The org lieutenant and remaining forces formed a protective circle around Orochimaru and the portal, creating a barrier the Rangers struggled to penetrate despite their coordinated efforts. Naruto assessed the situation with tactical clarity honed through countless battles. I need a direct line to the portal, he called to the Rangers. Can you create an opening? Cole nodded from his position. Rangers, jungle sword formation. The 5 Rangers moved with practiced precision, their individual weapons combining into a single, massive E-blade glowing with multicolored energy. The combined weapon slashed through the org defensive line, creating a momentary path. Naruto seized the opportunity, dismissing his remaining clones to concentrate his chakra fully. As he sprinted toward the portal, he felt the wild Zord energy Princess Shayla had mentioned resonating within him, merging with his sage chakra and Kurama's power in unprecedented ways. This is unexpected, Kurama commented within his mindscape. Our energies are harmonizing with this world's power. Use my chakra as a conduit, I'll help stabilize the connection. Golden-orange energy surrounded Naruto as he accessed Kurama's power, the familiar chakra mode manifesting with new elements, patterns resembling ancient symbols flowing across its surface. He felt the Red Lion's presence merging with his awareness, guiding his approach to the unfamiliar energy. Orochimaru's eyes widened at Naruto's transformation. Fascinating. The Biju chakra integrates with Animarium energy. He abandoned his technique, hands flashing through different signs. This requires closer study. The Sannin launched forward, his neck extending impossibly as his mouth opened too. Reveal fangs dripping with purple venom. Naruto recognized the attack pattern from their past encounters, Orochimaru attempting to apply a curse mark or inject venom. But this version carried the corrupted org energy, potentially devastating if it made contact. Naruto didn't attempt to dodge. Instead, he channeled the combined energy surrounding him into his right hand, forming a Rasengan unlike any he'd created before. Golden-orange chakra swirled with emerald wild Zord energy, creating a sphere that hummed with harmonic frequencies. Sage Art. Wild Rasengan. He called, naming the technique. Intuitively as he thrust it forward to meet Orochimaru's strike. The collision released a shockwave that rippled through the valley, temporarily blinding everyone present. When vision cleared, Orochimaru had been thrown back against the portal, his form flickering between solid and vapor as the conflicting energies disrupted his transformation. Impossible, the Sannin hissed, genuine surprise evident in his voice. The energies shouldn't harmonize so perfectly. Naruto pressed his advantage, approaching the portal with determined strides. The Rangers regrouped around him, providing cover. Age against the remaining orgs attempting to intervene. Whatever you're planning, do it fast, Taylor advised, dispatching an org with a precise strike. That portal is expanding again. Naruto CED both hands against the edges of the dimensional tear, channeling the combined energy of Sage Mode, Kurama's chakra, and the Wild Zord blessing. The contact burned like touching lightning, but he maintained his focus. Visualizing the separation of the two worlds, the restoration of natural boundaries. Orochimaru recovered enough to attempt interference, his body transforming further into a hybrid state, half-human, half-serpentine orb with scales that glowed with corrupt purple energy. You understand nothing of what you're preventing, Naruto. The scientific advances possible through diamonds. Ional fusion could revolutionize both worlds. At what cost? Naruto countered, maintaining his concentration despite the pain coursing through his arms. Look what it's already doing to the Animarium, to you. Some boundaries exist for a reason. The portal began to contract under Naruto's influence, its jagged edges smoothing as natural order reasserted itself. Orochimaru made one final desperate lunge toward Naruto. But the red lion appeared between them, materializing as if from nowhere. The massive Zord roared directly into Orochimaru's face, the sound carrying power that forced the Sannin back. With a final surge of effort, Naruto channeled everything he had into sealing the breach. The portal collapsed inward with a thunderclap of displacing air, the corrupting energy dissipating as natural balance returned. The effort left Naruto momentarily drained, dropping to one knee as the combined energy modes faded. The sudden closure of the portal created momentary confusion among the org forces. The Rangers capitalized ruthlessly, dispatching the disorganized enemies with efficient teamwork. Orochimaru, separated from his escape route, assessed the situation with cold calculation. It seems a strategic withdrawal is in order, he commented, his body already beginning to dissolve into purple mist. But this is merely the first exchange in a much longer game, Naruto-kun. Our worlds are connected now, in ways even you don't fully comprehend. Before anyone could prevent it, Orochimaru's form dispersed completely, the mist sinking into the ground and disappearing without trace. He escaped, Cole noted with frustration. For now, Naruto agreed, rising to his feet as his energy gradually stabilized. But he can't reopen that specific portal without significantly more preparation. We've bought time. Princess Shayla emerged from her hidden position, approaching with graceful urgency. Her hands glowed faintly as she touched the ground where the portal had been, her expression growing troubled. The dimensional barrier has been damaged, she explained. Though you prevented full convergence, Naruto, the boundary between our worlds has been permanently altered. That's why you were able to arrive, the first natural crossing point was forming. Taylor powered down from her ranger form, returning to her civilian appearance. The other rangers followed suit, revealing diverse appearances. Cole with long dark hair and a red bandana, Max with short blue-black hair and youthful features, Danny with curly black hair and glasses, and Alyssa with gentle features framed by long black hair. So we're looking at potential incursions from his world, Taylor summarized, gesturing toward Naruto without hostility but with lingering caution. And possibly more of those hybrid orgs Orochimaru was creating. Quote, Alyssa stepped forward, studying Naruto with academic interest rather than suspicion. The energy you channeled, it was remarkable. You harmonized completely, different power systems into a functional matrix. That shouldn't be theoretically possible. Naruto shrugged, somewhat embarrassed by the analytical assessment. I've always had a knack for improvising with chakra. Though I've never felt anything quite like the wild Zord energy before. The red lion approached, massive paws making surprisingly little sound on the forest floor. It stopped beside Naruto, lowering its head in what Princess Shayla clearly recognized as a significant gesture. Her eyes widened. The red lion is acknowledging you as the prophesied king of wild Zords, she translated with wonder. This hasn't happened since the original founding of the Animarium. King, Naruto repeated, genuinely startled. I'm not really the royalty type. Back home, I was working toward becoming Hokage, our village leader, but that's an elected position based on merit, not birthright. The king of wild Zords isn't about bloodline, Princess Shayla explained. It's about spiritual connection, the ability to bridge worlds and communicate with all wild Zords. The red lion recognized something in your spirit that resonates with the fundamental nature of the Animarium itself. Taylor crossed her arms, her expression thoughtful rather than hostile now. If the prophecy is accurate, and I'm still reserving judgment, then your arrival coincides with this new threat. Orochimaru's experiment, NTS have created a situation neither our team nor your shinobi can handle alone. Cole nodded in agreement. We need to understand what we're facing and prepare accordingly. Princess Shayla, does the temple library contain any information about dimensional convergence or these hybrid orgs? Some ancient texts mention parallel worlds, Princess Shayla confirmed. But nothing specific to this situation. However, she turned to Naruto. The blessing of the king grants access to knowledge stored within the wild Zords, collective memory. Through meditation with the red lion, you might access information even I cannot. Naruto glanced at the massive lion beside him, feeling the connection that had established itself during their first encounter. I'm willing to try anything that helps us understand what we're dealing with and how to protect both worlds. Taylor uncrossed her arms, making a decision. Then we return to the temple. If Orochimaru regroups and attempts another incursion, we need to be prepared. She fixed Naruto with a direct stare that held challenge but also the first hint of respect. And you, Naruto Uzumaki, have a lot more explaining to do about your world and this Orochimaru character. Naruto nodded, recognizing the reasonable request. Fair enough. And I have plenty of questions about your rangers, wild Zords, and whatever these Ord creatures are. As they prepared to depart, Naruto felt the seal on his abdomen warm again. Looking down, he noticed the design had subtly changed, the spiral pattern integrating new elements that resembled the ancient symbols he'd seen in Princess Shayla's writings. Something fundamental had shifted in his connection to Kurama and to the natural energy he channeled as a sage. This world's energy has changed us, Kurama observed within Naruto's mindscape. The connection feels right somehow, as though it's awakening something that always existed within our bond. Princess Shayla approached as the Rangers organized their departure, her perceptive gaze noting Naruto's introspection. The changes you're feeling, they're the manifestation of ancient connections between our worlds. The prophecy speaks the spiral sun and 9 spirits united as a bridge between realms. Your presence here isn't accidental, Naruto Uzumaki. It rarely is with me, Naruto replied with a slight smile. Trouble has a way of finding me, but so does purpose. He glanced at the red lion, who maintained a protective position nearby. I don't understand everything that's happening yet, but I know enough to recognize a responsibility when I see it. Princess Shayla's expression softened. The burden of a king is never light, but you won't bear it alone. The wild Zords stand with you, as do I, and she glanced toward Taylor, who was issuing instructions to the other rangers, eventually, I suspect, all the rangers as well. As they departed the battlefield, Naruto felt the Animarium itself responding to his presence, the plants, the animals. The very essence of this mystical realm acknowledging him in ways he couldn't fully articulate. Whatever destiny had brought him here, whatever challenges lay ahead with Orochimaru's dimensional tampering. One thing became increasingly clear. His life had changed fundamentally, and 2 worlds now depended on his newfound connection to the wild Zords. The red lion walked beside him, a silent guardian and mentor in this unfamiliar realm. Ahead, the rangers moved with purpose, already incorporating him into their tactical considerations despite lingering questions. And somewhere in the vast expanse of the Animarium, ancient prophecies continued to unfold, setting in motion events that would test the limits of Naruto's abilities and reshape the boundaries between worlds. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, The King's Awakening. Dawn broke over the Animarium with colors unseen in the shinobi world, ribbons of azure and gold threading through clouds that seemed to breathe rather than merely float. Naruto stood atop the temple's highest terrace, absorbing the panoramic view of this mystical realm. Ancient trees stretched toward the horizon, their crowns forming a verdant sea interrupted occasionally by stone formations and crystalline lakes. In the distance, mountains soared impossibly high, their peaks embraced by mist that shimmered with faint luminescence. 3 days had passed since his arrival and the confrontation with Orochimaru. 3 days of adjustments, explanations, and cautious integration with the Wild Force Rangers. It's beautiful, isn't it? Princess Shayla's melodic voice came from behind him. Even after 3,000 years as its guardian, the Animarium's dawn still takes my breath away. Naruto turned, offering a smile that came more naturally than it might have days ago. Princess Shayla approached with her characteristic grace, her white dress catching the morning light in ways that made it seem woven from the dawn itself. "We have beautiful sunrises in Konoha too," Naruto replied, "especially from the Hokage monument. But there's something different about this place, like the air itself is alive." "Your perception is accurate," Princess Shayla confirmed, standing beside him at the stone balustrade. "The Animarium exists in harmony with its inhabitants in ways your world may have forgotten. The boundary between living beings and their environment is more permeable here." Naruto nodded thoughtfully. "I've noticed during meditation, the natural energy flows differently. It's more responsive. Like it recognizes individual intentions rather than just existing as a neutral force." Princess Shayla's eyes brightened with approval. "You understand more quickly than I expected. Most visitors require months to perceive such subtleties." "I've had practice," Naruto admitted. "Being a sage and hosting Kurama forced me to become sensitive to different types of energy." Speaking of which, he gestured toward the sea courtyard below where Taylor paced impatiently. "I think my combat instructor is getting restless." Princess Shayla's lips curved into a small smile. "Taylor approaches everything with admirable dedication, if perhaps excessive intensity. She still harbors suspicions about your arrival, despite the Red Lion's blessing." "Can't blame her," Naruto shrugged. "If someone appeared in Konoha through a dimensional rift right after a major threat emerged, I'd be suspicious too. Especially if ancient prophecies suddenly started mentioning them." The princess studied him with that penetrating gaze that seemed to assess more than mere appearances. "Your understanding of her perspective speaks well of you, Naruto Uzumaki. Many in your position would respond with defensiveness rather than empathy." Naruto rubbed the back of his neck, slightly embarrassed. "I've had plenty of experience with people distrusting me. It used to make me angry, but eventually I realized suspicion usually comes from a place of wanting to protect something important." Princess Shayla nodded, her expression softening. "And that understanding is precisely why the Red Lion recognized you." She gestured toward the courtyard. "Shall we? Taylor has arranged quite the training regimen, and I have additional lessons planned for this afternoon regarding wild Zord communication." Together they descended the ancient staircase that wound through the temple's exterior. The structure defied conventional architectural logic. Parts seemed to grow directly from living stone while others floated impossibly without visible support. Fountains erupted from unexpected places, their water so pure it seemed to sing as it flowed through elaborate channels. Taylor straightened as they approached, her military posture automatic. She wore training attire, fitted black pants and a yellow tank top that allowed maximum mobility. Her blonde hair was pulled back in its customary ponytail, and her expression conveyed professional focus rather than the open hostility of days past. "You're late," she stated bluntly, though without real anger. "We agreed on sunrise, not 20 minutes after." Naruto grinned, unperturbed by her briskness. "Sorry about that. I got distracted watching a group of flying wild Zords performing some kind of morning ritual above the eastern forest. They moved in these incredible synchronized patterns." "The skyward dance," Princess Shayla interjected with approval. "The aerial wild Zords perform it to strengthen their connection to the Animarium. Most visitors never notice it." Taylor's expression shifted subtly, irritation softening into reluctant interest. "You saw the skyward dance?" Even Cole didn't notice that until he'd been here for months. Naruto shrugged, uncomfortable with what felt like accidental one-upmanship. "I'm used to keeping track of multiple moving objects during combat. And with Sage Mode, my perception extends pretty far." Speaking of combat, Taylor redirected, returning to her agenda with practiced efficiency. "Today we focus on integrating your jutsus, was it? With ranger combat techniques. Princess Shayla believes your unique energy signature MIGHT allow you to channel aspects of our powers even without formal transformation." "That's the working theory," Naruto confirmed, moving to the center of the training area, a circular space of packed earth surrounded by ancient stone markers. "My chakra has always been adaptable, even before Kurama and I reached our current partnership." Taylor circled him critically, assessing his stance with a tactician eye. "Your fighting style is efficient but unorthodox. No formal martial arts training." "Not in the way you mean," Naruto admitted. "Shinobi learn practical combat tailored to mission requirements, not specific disciplines." We borrow what works and discard what doesn't. Pragmatic, Taylor acknowledged with a slight nod. But potentially limiting against opponents with formalized training. The Rangers draw from multiple martial arts traditions combined with the innate powers granted by our connection to the wild Zords. She demonstrated a complex sequence of movements that flowed together with deceptive simplicity. Each Ranger's style reflects their associated wild Zord. My techniques incorporate the eagle's precision and aerial advantages. Naruto observed carefully. H. is experienced eye-catching subtleties in her movement. I see the pattern. You prioritize momentum and superior positioning rather than raw strength. Correct, Taylor confirmed, genuine approval flickering briefly across her features. Your observational skills are better than I expected. Gee, thanks, Naruto replied with good-natured sarcasm. Should I be offended that everyone keeps being surprised when I'm not completely clueless? Taylor's response surprised him, a brief but authentic smile that transformed her usually stern features. Perhaps we've been unfair in our assumptions. Though to be fair, your entrance into our world wasn't exactly dignified. Cole mentioned you fell face first into a sacred pond when you first arrived. That was gravity's fault, not mine, Naruto protested. Though his grin undermined any actual offense. Dimensional travel throws off your balance. Princess Shayla, who had seated herself at the edge of the training area, laughed softly. The Cred pools have welcomed many visitors in unusual ways throughout history. The ancient texts mention a legendary warrior who arrived completely tangled in seaweed, claiming to have fought a sea monster during his crossing. The light moment shifted as Taylor refocused. Enough banter. The princess believes your connection to the Red Lion might allow you to channel aspects of the Red Ranger's power. Let's test that theory. She retrieved a training staff from a nearby weapons rack, tossing it to Naruto, who caught it with practiced ease. Taylor selected a similar weapon for herself, then moved to a fighting stance. Channel your chakra through the staff while focusing on the Red Lion's energy signature, Princess Shayla instructed from her observation point. The connection established ring your first encounter created pathways that should allow energy transference. Naruto nodded, closing his eyes briefly to center himself. The staff, crafted from an unfamiliar wood with remarkable density, responded differently than objects in his world. When he channeled chakra into weapons at home, the energy required constant attention to maintain its flow. Here, the staff seemed to welcome his chakra, drawing it in and holding it without conscious effort. More interesting was what happened when he focused on the Red Lion. Though physically distant, the massive Zord had returned to its Mountain sanctuary after the battle. Naruto could sense its presence across the Animarium. The connection felt similar to his link with Kurama, yet distinct, less conversational, more primal and instinctive. Its consciousness operates differently than mine, Kurama observed from within Naruto's mindscape. The wild Zords exist simultaneously as individuals and as extensions of the Animarium itself. Like nature energy back home, but with distinct personalities, Naruto thought in response. Precisely. Try accessing that connection without my chakra as an intermediary. I suspect direct communion might yield different results. Naruto followed the suggestion, separating his sage chakra from Kurama's energy and directing it toward the tenuous bond with the Red Lion. The respawn was immediate and startling. The training staff blazed with crimson energy, transforming from simple wood to something that hummed with power. Taylor's eyes widened slightly. That's unexpected. You're channeling Red Lion energy without a morpher. Naruto examined the glowing staff with interest. It feels different than chakra, wilder somehow, less structured but more intuitive. Wild Zor. Energy responds to emotional intent rather than technical precision, Princess Shayla explained. Where your chakra requires specific control patterns, Zord energy resonates with the heart's genuine purpose. Fascinating theory. Taylor interjected with practical focus, but let's see if it has combat applications. Without further warning, she launched into a precisely executed attack sequence. Naruto parried instinctively, the red energized staff responding to his movements with supernatural fluidity. Each contact between their weapons released small crimson sparks, the wild Zord energy. Reacting to Taylor's inherent connection to the yellow eagle Zord. What began as a simple test evolved quickly into an elaborate sparring match. Taylor's military-honed techniques offered a refreshy Challenge. Different from the shinobi opponents Naruto typically faced. Where ninja often relied on deception and ninjutsu, Taylor's approach emphasized disciplined execution and tactical repositioning. Your stance is too wide, she critiqued, exploiting the opening with a sweep that Naruto barely avoided. And you telegraph your transitions between offensive and defensive postures. Naruto adjusted immediately, incorporating her feedback without ego. Different from shinobi combat, he acknowledged, countering with a combination that forced Taylor to retreat temporarily. We prioritize predictability over technical perfection. Both have merit, Taylor conceded, circling warily. But against formalized opponents, your unorthodoxy becomes predictable in its very unpredictability. Their weapons connected again, the energies interacting in increasingly complex patterns. Yellow sparks now mingled with the red, creating momentary mandalas of light with each impact. Princess Shayla leaned forward, her expression shifting to one of intense interest. Their energies are harmonizing, she murmured to herself. Just as the Wild Force Rangers combined powers. The sparring intensified, both participants now fully engaged in the exchange. Taylor's initial clinical assessment had evolved into genuine combat flow, her movements losing some rigid formality as she adapted to Naruto's unconventional style. For his part, Naruto incorporated elements of her technique into his approach, creating a hybrid style that borrowed from both traditions. The culmination came unexpectedly. During a particularly intense exchange, their staffs connected with perfect synchronicity. Instead of simply sparking, the energies merged completely, creating a shockwave that separated the combat. And left both weapons glowing with a harmonized orange energy. Whoa, Naruto exclaimed, examining his transformed staff. Did you know that would happen? Taylor looked equally surprised, studying her weapon with professional curiosity. No, that's never occurred during training with the other Rangers. Princess Shayla approached swiftly, her expression alight with excitement. The prophecy manifests further. The king shall harmonize disparate powers, finding unity where others see only division. She gestured to the glowing staffs. You've created a bridge between Ranger energy and Shinobi chakra, something previously thought impossible. Taylor tested her staff with an experimental swing, observing the orange energy trail it left in the air. The tactical applications are significant. If Ranger powers can be augmented with chakra techniques, and if Shinobi Jutsu can incorporate Wild Zord energy, Naruto continued her thought, already considering possibilities. It's LDB essential against Orochimaru and these hybrid orgs. They're clearly experimenting with combining powers from both worlds. Their theoretical discussion was interrupted by the arrival of Alyssa, the White Ranger, who hurried into the training area with evident excitement. Princess Shayla, she called, slightly breathless from her rush. I found something in the ancient texts you should see. She paused, registering the glowing weapons and raised an eyebrow. Did I miss something interesting? A breakthrough in cross-dimensional energy manipulation, Princess Shayla explained, gesturing toward Naruto and Taylor. Their distinct power sources have harmonized during combat training. Alyssa's eyes widened with scholarly interest. Unlike Taylor's militaristic approach, Alyssa brought an academic perspective to the team, her university background evident in her analytical response. That's consistent with my research findings, she said, holding up an ancient scroll carefully encased in protective material. The oldest records mention golden harmony between guardians of different realms during the original formation of the Animarium. She approached Naruto with none of Taylor's lingering suspicion, her curiosity evident. May I? She asked, gesturing toward his glowing staff. Naruto handed it over without hesitation. Alyssa examined it with careful attention, ally murmuring to herself as she traced patterns in the energy flow. The harmonization creates a completely new energy signature, she observed. Neither purely Wild Zord energy nor chakra, but something that incorporates properties of both. Theoretically, this might bypass natural resistance to either power system individually, making it effective against hybrid threats, Taylor concluded, her tactical mind immediately grasping the strategic implications. We should test this against various materials to establish baseline effectiveness. Princess Shayla turned to Alyssa. You mentioned finding something in the ancient texts. Quote, yes. Alyssa carefully returned the staff to Naruto before unrolling her scroll on a nearby stone table. I've been researching dimensional convergence since our encounter with Orochimaru, focusing on records predating the Animarium's separation from Earth. I found references to something called the Temple of Convergence, that supposedly exists simultaneously in multiple realms. The scroll revealed intricate diagrams of a structure built around what appeared to be a natural phenomenon, a point where different realities intersected. Ancient writing surrounded the images. The script so old that even Princess Shayla struggled to interpret it. The symbols are Proto-Animarian, she explained, tracing them delicately. They predate my guardianship by millennia. But this section, she indicated a particular passage, appears to describe a pact between the original Wild Zord guardians and beings from another realm who wielded spiral energy. Naruto leaned forward with sudden interest. Spiral energy. The Uzumaki clan, my mother's people, were known for their spiral symbolism and specialized sealing techniques. Princess Shayla's expression brightened with recognition. The spiral sun from the prophecy, your family seal pattern, could indicate a much older connection between our worlds than we realized, Alyssa finished, her academic excitement evident. These records suggest deliberate travel between realms rather than accidental breaches. Taylor, ever practical, redirected the conversation. Fascinating history, but how does this help us with our current Orochimaru problem? If there's a natural convergence point, Naruto reasoned, it might explain how Orochimaru found a way through in the first place. And if it was originally created through cooperation between our worlds, maybe that's where we should focus our defense efforts. Princess Shayla nodded in agreement. The Temple of Convergence was said to house artifacts that regulated dimensional boundaries. If Orochimaru has discovered its location, then we need to find it first, Taylor concluded firmly. She checked her wrist communicator. I'll contact the others. Cole and Max are tracking org activity in the southern forests. They should return by midday. Until then, Princess Shayla turned to Naruto, we should continue your training in Wild Zord communication. If you truly are the prophesied king, your ability to communicate with all Wild Zords will be crucial in coordinating our defenses. The training staff in Naruto's hand gradually lost its orange glow, the harmonized energy dissipating as their focus shifted. He returned it to the weapons rack with a thoughtful expression. You know, he said reflectively, back home, I spent years trying to gain recognition and prove my worth to the village. Now I'm in a completely different world with people calling me a prophesied king and ancient Wild Zords acknowledging me. Life takes some weird turns. Taylor's expression softened momentarily. Leadership rarely arrives how or when we expect it. When I joined the Air Force, I never imagined I'd end up defending a mystical floating island with animal spirits and Power Rangers. Alyssa smiled at them both. The best leaders are often those who never sought leadership for its own sake, but accepted responsibility when circumstances demanded it. She gathered her scroll carefully. I'll continue translating the older sections. There might be specific information about the temple's location. As Alyssa departed, Princess Shayla gestured for Naruto to follow her toward a different section of the temple grounds. For this afternoon's training, we'll work with smaller Wild Zords first. Their energy signatures are less overwhelming and will help you develop finesse before attempting communication with larger beings. Taylor returned to her communicator, coordinating with the absent rangers, but called after them, training resumes at sunset, Uzumaki. Don't be late this time. Naruto grinned over his shoulder. Wouldn't dream of it, drill sergeant. To his surprise, Taylor responded with a small but genuine smile. The second of the day, before returning to her communications. Progress, however slight, was still progress. Princess Shayla led him through winding paths adorned with flowering vines that seemed to reach toward them as they passed. The temple grounds extended further than seemed physically possible, with environments shifting subtly from manicured gardens to more naturalistic settings. The temple adapts to the needs of its inhabitants, Princess Shayla explained, noticing his curious observation. Spaces expand, contract, or transform based on the Animarium's interpretation of necessity. Like a living organism, Naruto remarked, fascinated by the concept. In Konoha, we build around nature. Here, it seems like nature and construction are in constant conversation. An apt description, Princess Shayla approved. The distinction between natural and constructed holds less meaning in the Animarium. all as part of a greater whole. They arrived at a small clearing where crystal clear water pooled around moss-covered stones. Delicate trees with silver-blue leaves created a canopy that filtered sunlight into dappled patterns. Most notably, the area teemed with small wild Zords, no larger than household pets, miniature versions of their massive counterparts. These smaller Zords possessed the same metallic sheen and mechanical aspects as the red lion, yet moved with organic fluidity. Some resembled conventional animals, tiny wolves, foxes, and birds, while others defied easy classification, combining features from multiple species or incorporating elements that seemed purely fantastical. "These are juvenile wild Zords?" Naruto asked, kneeling to observe them more closely. Princess Shayla settled gracefully onto a stone beside the pool. "Not exactly. Wild Zords don't age as biological creatures do. These are complete beings whose natural form is smaller. They serve specialized functions within the Animarium's ecosystem, messengers, healers, and caretakers for particular environments." A small silver fox-like Zord approached Naruto cautiously, its mechanical eyes gleaming with intelligence. Unlike ordinary animals, it showed no fear, only measured curiosity. "This is Lumen," Princess Shayla introduced, a messenger Zord who carries communications between distant regions of the Animarium. Naruto extended his hand slowly, allowing the small Zord to investigate at its own pace. "Hello, Lumen," he greeted softly. The fox Zord tilted its head, studying him intently before making a melodic chirping sound. To Naruto's surprise, meaning accompanied the sound, not exactly words, but clear impressions conveying greeting and inquiry. "It's asking about my connection to the Nine Tails," Naruto realized, looking to Princess Shayla with surprise. "I could understand that." Princess Shayla nodded encouragingly. "The blessing of the king grants comprehension of wild Zord communication. Focus on connecting with Lumen directly, not through words, but through intent and emotional resonance." Naruto closed his eyes, concentrating on the unique energy signature of the small fox Zord. Unlike the communication with Kurama, which had evolved from antagonistic to conversational over years, this connection felt immediately harmonious, as though they shared fundamental qualities despite originating from different worlds. "I carry the nine-tailed fox within me," Naruto projected, focusing on conveying understanding rather than specific words. "Kurama is my partner, a being of great power from my world." He opened his eyes to find Lumen sitting directly before him, mechanical tail swishing with interest. The small Zord chirped again, and this time the impressions came more clearly: curiosity about Kurama, recognition of a kindred spirit despite dimensional differences, and something else. Concern. "Lumen senses something troubling you," Princess Shayla translated, though Naruto had already grasped the essence of the communication. "I'm worried about my friends back home," Naruto admitted. "They don't know where I am or what's happened. And if Orochimaru is operating in both dimensions, they might be facing dangers without understanding the full picture." The small fox Zord chirped again, more insistently. Images flashed through Naruto's mind: the dimensional rift, energy pathways connecting worlds, the concept of messages traveling between realms. Princess Shayla leaned forward with interest. "Lumen believes communication between worlds might be possible through the right conduits. The messenger Zords sometimes perceive pathways invisible to others." Naruto brightened at this possibility. "If I could at least let them know I'm alive and working to address the dimensional breach." His thought was interrupted as several more small Zords approached, drawn by Lumen's apparent excitement. Each introduced itself through emotional impressions rather than words: a tiny blue dolphin-like Zord named Cascade who monitored water purity, a metallic hummingbird called Swift who tracked weather patterns, and a peculiar armadillo-like being named Terra who maintained subterranean tunnel networks. As Naruto connected with each new Zord, the process became increasingly intuitive. Their consciousnesses differed from human or Biju minds, less linear, more holistically integrated with their environments, but their fundamental emotions proved universally understandable: curiosity, loyalty, concern, determination. "You're progressing remarkably quickly," Princess Shayla observed after an hour of practice. "Most rangers require months to achieve clear communication with even one wild Zord." "It's probably because of my sage training," Naruto theorized, gently stroking Terra's armored back as the small Zord contentedly leaned against his knee. Connecting with nature energy creates similar mental pathways. Princess Shayla studied him with that penetrating gaze that seemed to perceive more than mere physical presence. Perhaps, though I suspect your natural empathy plays an equally important role. You connect easily with others' emotional states, a crucial quality for the King of Wild Zords. Naruto shifted uncomfortably at the title. About that, King, business. I'm not really sure I understand what it actually means. Beyond communicating with Wild Zords, what exactly is expected of me? The legends describe the king as a unifier. Princess Shayla explained, one who bridges not just communication but purpose. Wild Zords operate largely independently, each with its own domain and concerns. In times of great crisis, they require centralized coordination, a consciousness capable of understanding both individual needs and collective necessity. So less about ruling and more about connecting, Naruto interpreted. Finding the concept more palatable. That actually sounds similar to how I've always seen the Hokage's role, not as someone who commands from above, but someone who understands and represents the village's heart. Princess Shayla smiled warmly. Precisely. Leadership in its truest form is service through understanding. Their conversation was interrupted by an alarming sound, a deep, reverb-erating cry that seemed to shake the very air around them. The small Zords immediately tensed, Lumen's mechanical hackles rising as it emitted a warning chirp. What was that? Naruto asked, already rising to his feet. Princess Shayla's expression transformed to one of concern. A wild Zord in distress, a significant one, based on the resonance pattern. She closed her eyes briefly, focusing on the distant cry. The elephant Zord, from the western jungles. Something is wrong. The small Zords gathered around Princess Shayla, chirping and whirring in patterns that conveyed urgent information. Her eyes widened as she interpreted their communication. The messenger network reports unusual energy signatures in the western jungle, similar to the corruption we witnessed during Orochimaru's incursion, but without an active portal. Naruto reached for his communications device, a modified version of the Ranger's standard equipment adapted to interface with his chakra. I'll alert Taylor and the others. There may not be time. Princess Shayla countered, already rising with unusual urgency. The elephant Zord protects critical watersheds that sustain much of the Animarium's ecosystem. If it's been corrupted, then we move now, Naruto concluded firmly. He knelt to address the small Zords directly, focusing on conveying clear intent. Can you guide us to the elephant Zord's location? Lumen chirped affirmatively, while Swift the hummingbird Zord launched into the air with determined purpose. Swift will scout ahead while Lumen guides us, Princess Shayla translated, though Naruto had already grasped the essence of their response. But we should still attempt to contact the Rangers. Naruto nodded, activating his communicator as they began moving swiftly through the PLE grounds toward the western section of the Animarium. Taylor, come in. We have a situation with the elephant Zord in the western jungle. Static answered him briefly before Taylor's voice broke through. Copy that. What kind of situation? Signs of corruption similar to what we saw with Orochimaru's portal, but no active breach detected. Princess Shayla says it's urgent. Something about crucial watersheds. Taylor's response was immediate and decisive. On my way. Cole and Max are still in the southern forest. Alyssa is at the temple archives, and Danny's working with the Black Bison Zord. Don't engage without backup. Naruto exchanged glances with Princess Shayla as they hurried along a path that seemed to be forming itself ahead of them, the temple grounds responding to their urgency. If the elephant Zord is truly corrupted, the princess stated with uncharacteristic gravity, waiting may not be an option. Its influence over the western water systems could spread contaminate ion throughout the Animarium within hours. Understood. Naruto responded into the communicator. We'll assess the situation and wait for backup if possible, but may need to act depending on contamination risks. Taylor's frustrated sigh came clearly through the device. Of course you will. Try not to get the princess killed before I arrive. Taylor out. She's warming up to me, Naruto remarked. Ed with slight humor as they reached the temple's western boundary, where dense jungle began immediately beyond an ornate gateway. Taylor's concern is justified, Princess Shayla cautioned as they passed through the gateway. The jungle seeming to part slightly to ease their passage. A corrupted wild Zord of the elephant's significance has never been encountered in modern times. The ancient Rico RDS speak of devastating consequences when major Zords fall to darkness. The jungle closed around them, its character distinctly different from the forests surrounding Konoha. Here, vegetation posse, SSED awareness bordering on sentience, vines adjusted their positions to avoid hindering their progress, while thorny plants retracted dangerous protrusions as they passed. The canopy above was so dense that midday light filtered through as twilight illumination, creating an atmosphere of perpetual dusk despite the actual time. Lumen darted ahead, its silver form occasionally glinting when it passed. Through rare shafts of direct sunlight. The small fox Zord moved with absolute certainty, navigating through the complex environment without hesitation. As they progressed deeper into the jungle, Naruto detected subtle changes in the ambient energy. Where the Animarium typically hummed with harmonious vibrations, disturbing discordant notes began to intrude, like an instrument gradually falling out of tune. "Do you feel that?" he asked Princess Shayla, who nodded grimly. "Corruption spreading through the natural energy networks," she confirmed. "It begins subtly but accelerates exponentially once established." The vegetation around them showed increasing signs of distress, leaves curling unnaturally, flowers closing despite the time of day, vines withdrawing into defensive positions. Small jungle creatures hurried past them, fleeing from something ahead. Swift returned, the hummingbird Zord's movements now agitated as it communicated rapidly with Princess Shayla. Her expression grew increasingly troubled as she interpreted the information. "The situation is worse than anticipated," she reported. "The elephant Zord hasn't merely been influenced by corruption, it appears to have been deliberately infected with something Swift doesn't recognize. A purple substance coating its mechanical components." "Purple?" Naruto's expression darkened with recognition. "That sounds like Orochimaru's work, specifically his cursed seal technology. He uses it to corrupt and control subjects." Princess Shayla's alarm visibly increased. "If he's found a way to apply such techniques to wild Zords directly, then we're looking at a test run for something bigger," Naruto concluded grimly. The Rangers mentioned that wild Zords are connected through shared energy networks. If Orochimaru can corrupt one completely, he could potentially spread infection throughout the Animarium's defensive systems, Princess Shayla finished, the implications clearly disturbing her. "We must cure the elephant Zord before the contamination becomes irreversible." They increased their pace, following Lumen through increasingly affected jungle. The discordant energy grew more pronounced, now, accompanied by an audible component, a low, pulsing hum that set Naruto's teeth on edge. "I recognize that frequency," Kurama commented from within Naruto's mindscape. "It resembles the vibratio null pattern of Orochimaru's cursed seals, but modified somehow, adapted to interface with the mechanical aspects of wild Zords." "Can we counter it?" Naruto asked internally. "Possibly. Our Mbined chakra successfully neutralized his seals in the past. But this hybrid version might require additional components, perhaps incorporating the wild Zord energy you've been learning to channel." Their internal conversation was interrupted as they reached the edge of a massive clearing, clearly unnatural, as though something enormous had crashed through the jungle, flattening everything in its path. At the center stood the elephant Zord, and the sight made both Naruto and Princess Shayla stop short. The massive mechanical beast towered 15 meters high, its metallic hide normally a Nified gray-blue now stained with pulsating purple corruption that spread in vein-like patterns across its surface. Its trunk thrashed erratically, uprooting trees and destroying everything within reach. Most disturbing were its eyes, once clear and intelligent, now clouded with malevolent purple energy that occasionally discharged in crackling arcs. "That's not good," Naruto understated, SSING the situation with experienced eyes. The corruption appeared to be spreading visibly, purple tendrils extending further across the Zord's body with each passing minute. Princess Shayla stepped forward instinctively, but Naruto gently caught her arm. "Wait, we need a plan before approaching. That thing could crush you with a single misstep." She paused, acknowledging his concern with a nod. "You're right. Direct communication appears impossible in its current state. The corruption is blocking normal wild Zord connection channels." Naruto considered their options. Taylor's still at Lee Saint 10 minutes away if she's coming from the temple. We need to contain the corruption before it spreads further. How? Princess Shayla asked, her usual serene confidence temporarily shaken by the severity of the situation. Naruto studied the corrupted Zord, noting patterns in the purple energy's flow. The infection seems to have a central point, there, near the base of its trunk. The corruption spreads outward from that location. He formed a familiar hand sign. I'm going to send shadow clones to gather more information while we formulate a strategy. 5 perfect duplicates appeared around him, each nodding once before darting off in different directions to surround the clearing. They moved with practiced stealth, utilizing the jungle's cover to approach observation positions without alerting the distressed Zord. Your clones possess independent consciousness? Princess Shayla asked, momentarily distracted from the crisis by academic curiosity. Each one thinks and acts individually. Though they all start with my memories and personality, Naruto explained as he monitored their progress. When they disperse, their experiences return to me. It's useful for reconnaissance, ND spreading attention across multiple locations. The first clone reached its position, carefully observing the corruption's pattern before signaling its findings to the original. The others followed suit, each gathering different angles and information. The infection point is definitely artificial, Naruto reported as data flowed back from his clones. Some kind of device has been attached to the Zord, probably pumping Orochimaru's corrupted chakra directly into its systems. Princess Shayla's expression hardened with uncharacteristic anger. A deliberate attack, then. Not environmental exposure. Exactly. Which means removing the device might halt the corruption spread. Naruto's eyes narrowed in concentration. The problem is getting close enough without being trampled, and then figuring out how to remove something designed to resist tampering. At that moment, his communicator activated. Naruto. Princess, I'm 2 minutes out, Taylor's voice reported. What's your status? Confirmed corruption of the Elephant Zord via an attached device, Naruto responded quickly. Purple energy consistent with Orochimaru's techniques. Situation deteriorating rapidly. Taylor's reply came with professional crispness. Do not engage until I arrive. That's an order, not a suggestion. Princess Shayla leaned toward the communicator. Taylor, the corruption is spreading too quickly. If it reaches the watershed. Her warning was cut short as the Elephant Zord suddenly trumpeted, a sound distorted by corruption into something that raised hackles and sent wildlife fleeing in terror. The massive beast turned, somehow sensing their presence despite the considerable distance and jungle cover. It's detected us, Naruto stated unnecessarily, already shifting to place himself between the Zord and Princess Shayla. Change of plans. Princess, fall back to safer distance. I'll distract it while we wait for Taylor. Be careful, she cautioned, retreating as instructed but remaining close enough to observe. Corrupted wild Zords retain their original abilities but lose the restraint that normally governs their use. The Elephant Zord charged toward their position with surprising speed for something so massive. Purple energy crackling around it like corrupt lightning. Trees shattered beneath its weight as it plowed through the jungle with single-minded purpose. Naruto created 20 more shadow clones, deploying them in a diversionary pattern designed to confuse and redirect the charging Zord. Scatter and distract, he commanded, his clones immediately implementing. The strategy with coordinated efficiency. The approaching behemoth hesitated momentarily as identical targets suddenly proliferated in different directions, its corruption-clouded mind struggling to determine which to pursue. This momentary confusion gave Naruto precious seconds to formulate a more substantive plan. Any ideas, Kurama? He asked internally, calculating trajectories and escape routes. The corruption resembles a chakra virus, similar to techniques Orochimaru developed during his Akatsuki days, the fox replied thoughtfully. Our combined chakra should neutralize it temporarily. But removing the source will require precision timing. Naruto nodded imperceptibly. I'll get close enough to examine the device while my clones keep it occupied. He created 5 more clones with specific instructions. Then launched himself toward the confused Zord with chakra-enhanced speed. His clones executed their roles perfectly, some using transformation techniques to appear as different targets. Others creating minor earth jutsu to divert the Zord's attention with shifting terrain. As Naruto approached, the sheer scale of the Elephant Zord became fully apparent. even corrupted and in distress. It moved with impressive coordination, its massive legs crushing everything in their path while its trunk swept in devastating arcs that dismantled Naruto's clones on contact. Using Sage Mode's enhanced perception, Naruto identified a potential approach vector, leaping from a partially fallen tree onto the Zord's left flank, where the corruption appeared slightly less concentrated. With precise timing, he executed the maneuver, chakra coating his hands and feet to maintain purchase on the metallic surface. The moment he made contact, discomfort rippled through him. Corruption actively resisted his presence, sending painful feedback through his chakra network. Nevertheless, he maintained his position, climbing carefully toward the device he'd spotted at the base of the trunk. Up close, the corruption's nature became clearer. Purple fluid pulsed through transparent tubes connected to a central apparatus that resembled a mechanical leech, its design combining Orochimaru's biological components with unfamiliar technology that must have originated from the Animarium's enemies. Taylor, Naruto spoke into his communicator, voice tight with concentration as he maintained his precarious position. I've identified the corruption device. It's a hybrid technology, part biological, part mechanical. Looks like Orochimaru collaborated with your org enemies. I can see you, Taylor's voice replied. Tension evident despite her professional tone. You're literally clinging to a corrupted wild Zord against direct orders. Why am I not surprised? Time-sensitive situation, Naruto responded simply, examining the device more closely. The corruption spreading faster than expected. I'm going to attempt removal. Wait for. Taylor's protest was cut short, as the elephant Zord detected Naruto's presence directly and began thrashing more violently, attempting to dislodge the unwelcome passenger. Naruto clung determinedly to the bucking Zord, fingers digging into slight gaps in its metallic hide. The device was now clearly visible, a circular apparatus approximately 30 centimeters in diameter, with 6 injection points penetrating the Zord's exterior. Purple fluid pumped rhythmically through translucent tubes, and at the center, a small crystal pulsed with malevolent energy. That crystal is the control mechanism, Kurama identified. Similar to how Orochimaru's cursed seals contain compressed, corrupted natural energy. If I remove it directly, the trauma might harm the elephant Zord further, Naruto reasoned, studying the injection system. We need to neutralize the corruption first, then safely detach the mechanism. His analysis was interrupted as a yellow blur streaked through the air, Taylor in her ranger form, wielding her eagle sword with precision as she severed one of the device's external tubes. Purple fluid sprayed outward, narrowly missing Naruto as he twisted to avoid contact. The tubes are pressurized, Taylor called as she maneuvered for another pass. Cut them all at once or the pressure will increase in the remaining lines. Naruto nodded acknowledgement, creating 3 shadow clones on the Zord's surface beside him. On my mark, target the remaining tubes simultaneously, he instructed. I'll handle the central crystal. Taylor positioned herself for another approach, her aerial maneuverability allowing her to hover momentarily. Ready on your signal. The elephant Zord's thrashing intensified as if sensing their intentions. Naruto and his clones struggled to maintain their positions, timing their movement against the Zord's increasingly erratic motions. Now, Naruto commanded when the Zord briefly steadied itself between violent movements. The 3 clones sliced through the remaining tubes with chakra-enhanced kunai while Taylor's precisely aimed strike severed the last external connection. Purple fluid sprayed in multiple directions, immediately beginning to evaporate into toxic mist as it contacted air. Simultaneously, Naruto channeled a unique combination of energies, his Sage Chakra, Kurama's power, and the wild Zord connection he'd been cultivating. Golden-orange energy surrounded his right hand, taking on the distinctive spherical shape of his signature technique. Harmonizing Rasengan, he named it instinctively, driving the swirling energy directly into the central crystal. The connection was immediate and overwhelming. Rather than simply destroying the crystal, the harmonized energy created a conversion reaction, purifying the corruption by transforming its fundamental nature. Brilliant light erupted from the contact point, spreading rapidly through the elephant Zord's systems as golden energy chased purple corruption through its mechanical veins. The effect on the Zord was dramatic. Its thrashing ceased abruptly, replaced by momentary rigidity before its entire massive form shuddered violently, as though expelling something toxic from its system. The purple haze surrounding it dispersed, revealing the Zord's natural coloration gradually returning as corruption receded. Naruto maintained contact, pouring harmonized energy into the converse ion process until the central crystal shattered, its malevolent power completely neutralized. The device, now inactive, detached easily from the Zord's surface, falling to the jungle floor below. The elephant Zord trumpeted again, this time a clear, resonant sound that carried notes of relief and gratitude rather than distorted agony. Its eyes cleared, intelligent awareness returning as the corruption's hold broke completely. Naruto, exhausted from the intense energy expenditure, lost his grip on the now calm Zord and began to fall. Before he could summon the concentration to land safely, Taylor swooped beneath him, catching him mid-air with surprising strength. That, she stated as they descended toward where Princess Shayla waited, was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've say. And since Cole decided to ride the savage cycle unmorphed. Despite her critical words, her tone carried unmistakable respect, perhaps the first time Naruto had heard that emotion from her without qualification. Sometimes the line between brave and foolish is pretty thin, Naruto replied with a tired grin as they landed. Thanks for the save. Princess Shayla hurried forward, her expression mixing concern with wonder. The purification was complete, she marveled, looking up at the elephant Zord, which now stood calmly observing them. Not merely contained or suppressed, but fully reversed. The ancient texts mentioned the king's purification, but seeing it manifested. Taylor deactivated her ranger form, returning to her civilian appearance with a flash of yellow light. She knelt to examine the fallen device, careful not to directly touch the now inactive mechanism. We need to get this to Alyssa for analysis, she stated, retrieving a containment case from her equipment pouch. If Orochimaru is mass-producing these, quote, he's testing the technology, Naruto concluded grimly, his combat-heightened senses gradually returning to normal. The elephant Zord was chosen deliberately. Why? Significant enough to cause substantial damage, but not as heavily protected as primary Zords like the Red Lion. Princess Shayla approached the now purified elephant Zord, communicating with it rough the silent connection she shared with all wild Zords. After a moment, she turned back with a troubled expression. The elephant has no memory of how the device was attached, she reported. It recalls entering the western watershed as usual, then experiencing discomfort before losing consciousness. The next clear memory is the purification process. Stealth application. Then, Taylor assessed professionally. Someone managed to approach a wild Zord undetected, attach this device, and escape without being noticed. That shouldn't be possible with the Animarium's natural defenses. The elephant Zord trumpeted softly, lowering its massive head toward Naruto in what Princess Shayla immediately recognized as a gesture of profound respect. The princess's eyes widened slightly. The elephant Zord acknowledges you as its savior, she translated, though Naruto found he understood the sentiment directly. And more significantly, recognizes the energy you channeled as the true signature of the wild Zord King. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck, uncomfortable with the formality. I just did what needed doing. Anyone would have tried to help. Perhaps, Princess Shayla replied with gentle certainty. But few could have succeeded. The purification you performed isn't simply about power, it requires a fundamental harmony between different energy systems that most beings cannot achieve. Taylor finished securing the corrupting device in her containment case. We should return to the temple immediately. The others need to be briefed, and we need to establish new security protocols if Orochimaru's agents can approach wild Zords undetected. As they prepared to depart, a thunderous roar echoed across the Animarium, instantly recognizable as the Red Lion. The sound wasn't distant, it approached rapidly. The massive leader of the wild Zords appearing at the jungle's edge moments later. The Red Lion moved with purpose, massive paws covering ground with deceptive speed despite its size. It approached Naruto directly, intelligent eyes assessing him with intensity that communicated clearly without words. It sensed the purification, Princess Shayla explained with quiet awe. From across the Animarium, the Red Lion stopped before Naruto, lowering its massive head to eye level. Unlike their first encounter, which had carried elements of testing and assessment, this interaction conveyed absolute certainty. The massive Zord had reached a decision. Golden light began to emanate from the Red Lion's eyes, coalescing between them into a small, intensely glowing object. That gradually took definite form, a device similar to what Taylor and the other Rangers carried, but distinct in its design. Where their morphers featured individual animal motifs, this one incorporated elements from multiple wild Zords in an intricate pattern surrounding a central red crystal. The object floated from the red lion to hover before Naruto, clearly waiting to be accepted. Princess Shayla gasped softly. "The Animarium Sage Morpher," she whispered in tones of reverence. "It hasn't manifested in 5,000 years, since the original Wild Zord King united the Animarium during the First Great Corruption." Taylor stared with undisguised astonishment. "That's not possible. The legend said it was lost when the original king sacrificed himself to establish the dimensional barrier." "Not lost," Princess Shayla corrected softly, waiting for the prophesied return. Naruto looked between them and the hovering device, understanding the significance of the moment even without complete context. "What exactly does this mean?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "It means the Red Lion, and by extension, all Wild Zords, have officially acknowledged you as the King of Wild Zords." Princess Shayla explained. "The morpher contains essence from every Wild Zord species, allowing you to channel their combined power rather than individual aspects." The Devi, CE continued hovering patiently before him, its golden light pulsing gently in rhythm with his heartbeat. After a moment's hesitation, Naruto reached out and accepted it. The moment his fingers closed around the morpher, golden light enveloped him completely. Unlike Taylor's transformation, which occurred through deliberate activation, this change happened spontaneously, the morpher recognizing and responding to its chosen wielder. The light solidified into a form-fitting uniform unlike any the Rangers wore. Where their outfits featured single colors with white accents, Naruto's manifestation incorporated deep crimson as its base with golden symbols representing different Wild Zords flowing across its surface in constantly shifting patterns. The helmet formed with a design reminiscent of the Red Lion but incorporated subtle elements from other Zords as well. Most distinctive was the chest emblem, a spiral sun symbol that matched the seal on Naruto's abdomen, surrounded by a circle of smaller Wild Zord emblems. As the transformation completed, Naruto felt an unprecedented connection to the Animarium itself, as though he could sense every Wild Zord, every energy flow, every subtle shift in the realm's balance. The sensation was overwhelming yet somehow natural, as if awakening capabilities that had always existed within him, dormant until this moment. The Animarium Sage Ranger, Princess Shayla named him with quiet certainty. "The King of Wild Zords has returned." The Red Lion roared in confirmation, the sound echoed by the Elephant Zord and, distantly, by Wild Zords throughout the Animarium, a cascading chorus of acknowledgement that spread across the entire realm. Taylor observed the transformation with an expression that had moved beyond skepticism to genuine acceptance. "Well," she said simply, "I guess that settles the, is he really the prophesied king, debate." The armor dissolved as quickly as it had formed, returning to the morpher which now attached itself to Naruto's wrist like the Ranger's devices. Unlike their morphers, however, it seemed partially integrated with his body, not merely a device but an extension of his own energy system. "This changes our strategic position significantly," Taylor noted, her tactical mind immediately processing implications. "A fully acknowledged Wild Zord King gives us capabilities we haven't had since the Animarium's founding. And presents a clear target for Orochimaru," Naruto added pragmatically. "If he's studying Wild Zord energy for corruption purposes, the Animarium Sage Ranger represents both the Grey A test threat to his plans and potentially his most valuable research subject." Princess Shayla nodded gravely, "which is precisely why the ancient kings established the Temple of Convergence, to court both realms from threats that might exploit dimensional boundaries. Then finding this temple becomes our top priority," Taylor concluded, already activating her communicator to update the other Rangers. "And establishing why Orochimaru targeted the Elephant Zord specifically." As they made their way back toward the temple, the Elephant Zord and Red Lion accompanying them partway before returning to their respective territories. Naruto found himself reflecting on how dramatically his circumstances had changed in mere days. From accidental visitor to acknowledged king of wild Zords, from suspicious outsider to central figure in the Animarium's defense. "You're thinking about your friends back in Konoha," Kurama observed within his mindscape. I am. Naruto confirmed silently. Especially with Orochimaru operating in both dimensions. They need to know what's happening. The new morpher might provide possibilities, the fox suggested. It contains energy patterns specifically designed to bridge realms. With the right application, perhaps communication could be established. Naruto glanced down at the device on his wrist, studying its intricate patterns with renewed interest. We'll figure it out. We always do. As they reached the edge of the temple grounds, Naruto noticed subtle changes in how the Animarium responded to his presence, flowers turning toward him like miniature sunflowers tracking the sun, vines gently reaching out before respectfully withdrawing, small wild Zords emerging briefly from hiding to acknowledge him before returning to their duties. The shift wasn't lost on Princess Shayla, who walked beside him with a knowing expression. The Animarium recognizes its king, she explained softly. Not as master, but as guardian and connection point. You'll find many aspects of this realm more responsive to your presence now. Taylor, walking slightly ahead while reporting developments to the other rangers via communicator, glanced back. Kay with what might have been her first genuinely warm smile directed at Naruto. Just don't let it go to your head, she advised, though her tone carried good-natured teasing rather than criticism. Have enough trouble with Cole talking to every animal he meets without you starting conversations with plants. Naruto laughed, appreciating the moment of levity amid increasingly complex circumstances. I make no promises, though I draw the line at singing to flowers, that's strictly Princess Shayla's department. The princess's melodious laugh joined his as they crossed into the temple proper, where the other rangers would soon gather to address this latest development in the ongoing dimensional crisis. None of them noticed the small, snake-like mechanical device observing from the jungle's edge. Its purple eyes recording everything before slithering away through dimensional space to report to its creator. Thousands of miles away, or perhaps more accurately, one dimension Saidua. Hinata Hyuga knelt beside a clearing that hummed with unusual energy. Her Byakugan active, she studied the disturbance with the analytical precision that characterized her clan's approach to chakra phenomena. Naruto-kun was definitely here, she murmured to herself, examining residual chakra patterns visible only to her specialized vision. 3 days ago, judging by the degradation rate, he had been tracking him since his missed check-in following a routine training exercise. Initial concern had blossomed into focused investigation when standard search protocols yielded no results. Others sought conventional explanations. Hinata had followed subtler signs, disturbances in natural chakra flow that Naruto's sage training often left behind. The trail had led her here, to this remarkable clearing where something remarkable had clearly occurred. The space seemed to fold strangely when viewed with the Byakugan, as though reality itself had been stretched and hadn't quite returned to its original configuration. Most telling was the residual chakra signature, unmistakably Naruto's, but interwoven with something entirely unfamiliar. Not hostile, but definitely foreign to their world. He didn't fight, she noted with slight relief, examining ground disturbance patterns. No signs of combat or resistance. He approached this spot deliberately. Rising gracefully, RMED, a series of precise hand signs, a tracking technique developed through years of refining her clan's abilities with her own specialized approach. Her Byakugan intensified, chakra networks in her EY's glowing more brightly as she pushed her perception to its absolute limits. For a brief, tantalizing moment, she glimpsed something beyond the apparent boundary of their world, a shimmering connection leading elsewhere. Tethered to Naruto's distinctive chakra signature. The vision lasted only seconds before the strain forced her to release the technique, but it confirmed her suspicion. A dimensional transition, she concluded. Her soft voice firm with certainty. Not teleportation or space-time ninjutsu, but actual movement between separate realities. The implication was both concerning and somewhat reassuring. If Naruto had crossed dimensional boundaries, it explained why conventional tracking methods had failed. More importantly, the lack of combat indicators suggested the transition might have been voluntary. Or at least non-hostile. Still, with Orochimaru's recent suspicious activities and reports of unusual energy disturbances from multiple nations, the timing seemed far from coincidental. Hinata activated her standard communication seal, knowing she needed to report her findings before proceeding further. Shikamaru, this is Hinata. I've located the point where Naruto disappeared. Evidence suggests dimensional transition rather than conventional movement or combat. After a brief pause, Shikamaru's voice responded through the seal. Dimensional transition. That's troublesome. Any indication of where he might have gone or how? The chakra residue is unlike anything in our records, Hinata replied, continuing to study the area with her Byakugan. But it's not inherently malevolent. I believe with further analysis, I might be able to trace the connection. Shikamaru's sigh came clearly through the communication. Don't attempt crossing without backup. I'll send Sakura to your location. Her chakra control might help stabilize any technique you develop. Kakashi should be informed as well, though he's currently investigating similar anomalies reported near Orochimaru's last known location. Understood, Hinata acknowledged. I'll continue analyzing the transition point while waiting for Sakura. As she deactivated the communication seal, Hinata returned her full attention to the dimensional disturbance. With methodical precision, she began cataloging every subtle energy variation, every distortion in the natural flow of chakra, constructing a comprehensive model of what had occurred. If Naruto had crossed into another dimension, she would find a way to follow. Not merely out of personal devotion, though that certainly factored into her determination, but because instinct and experience told her this unexpected development connected to something larger. Something that potentially threatened both their world and wherever Naruto had gone. The sun began setting as she worked, casting long shadows across the clearing. In the fading light, Hinata thought she glimpsed, just for a moment, a flicker of something impossible, a massive, lion-like shape composed of red-gold energy. Observing her briefly before disappearing, she blinked, uncertain whether the vision had been real or merely a product of extended Byakugan use. Either way, it strengthened her resolve. Something extraordinary had occurred here, and Naruto stood at its center. As always, where he led, however unintentionally, she would follow. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Worlds in Collision. Moonlight bathed the Animarium in silver, transforming the landscape into a realm of whispered secrets and shifting shadows. 7 days had passed since Naruto's arrival, 5 Sync. His acknowledgement as king of wild Zords. Tonight, he sat alone atop the temple's highest spire, legs crossed in meditation posture, the Animarium sage morpher pulsing gently against his wrist in rhythm with his heartbeat. Below him, the temple slumbered, rangers resting after another day of preparation and training. Only Princess Shayla remained awake, moving through the moonlit gardens with practiced grace. Her nightly communion with the Animarium is essential to her as breathing. Still can't sleep. Taylor's voice broke Naruto's contemplation. He turned to find her approaching along the narrow stone walkway. Her movements silent despite the precarious height. Just thinking, Naruto replied, making room beside him on the stone perch. Trying to sort through everything that's happened. A week ago, I was training outside Konoha, and now. Taylor settled beside him, legs dangling over the edge. In the days since his acknowledgement by the Red Lion, their relationship had evolved. From suspicious tolerance to something approaching genuine camaraderie. And now you're the mystical king of wild Zords, she completed his thought, her tone mixing wry humor with earnest understanding. Not exactly what you had on your calendar. Naruto chuckled softly. Definitely not. Though unexpected responsibilities are kind of my specialty. Taylor studied him in the moonlight, her military-trained observational skills noting the subtle tension in his shoulders. You're worried about your home. It wasn't a question, but Naruto answered anyway. Yeah, with Orochimaru moving between dimensions and developing these hybrid technologies, both worlds are vulnerable. And my friends have no idea what's happening or where I am. The communicator experiments aren't working. Taylor asked, referring to their attempts to establish cross-dimensional contact using modified ranger technology. Naruto shook his head. Alyssa's theory about harmonic frequencies made sense, but something's blocking the signal. Like there's interference deliberately placed between dimensions. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the cool night breeze carrying scents of exotic flowers and distant water. Below, Princess Shayla's voice lifted in soft song, an ancient melody that seemed to make the very air shimmer with response. She sings to the Animarium every night, Taylor observed, her voice softening. Maintaining the connection that keeps this place hidden and safe. Naruto watched the distant white-clad figure, her movements fluid as flowing water as she moved through the garden paths. She carries a lot of responsibility. 3,000 years as guardian, mostly spent in magical sleep, waking to constant threats. I can't imagine that kind of existence. Taylor's expression grew thoughtful. I've never heard her complain, not once. Not even when we were losing battles against Master Org or when she was directly targeted. She glanced at Naruto with sudden insight. You, two have that in common, bearing burdens without resentment. The observation surprised him. I never thought about it that way. Though my burden came with a grumpy fox who spent years threatening to eat me. I heard that, Kurama grumbled from within his mindscape, though with no real hostility. The princess has noticed your connection to this place, Taylor continued, her tone shifting subtly. She says you're learning wild Zord communication faster than anyone in recorded history. Naruto shrugged, slightly embarrassed by the praise. It's similar to Sage Mode in some ways, feeling the energy flow. Finding harmony with natural patterns. And Kurama helps bridge the gap between my understanding and theirs. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by Princess Shayla's distant singing and the occasional calls of nocturnal wild Zords. Taylor seemed to be considering something, her normally decisive manner momentarily hesitant. The team respects what you did with the elephant Zord, she finally said. Her voice carrying unusual warmth. Even Danny, who's usually the most cautious about newcomers, mentioned your quick thinking saved us from a potential ecological disaster. Naruto grinned, high praise coming from the team botanist. Though if we're being honest, it was a team effort. Your aerial attack created the opening I needed. Taylor shook her head with a small smile. And that's why the Red Lion chose you. Most people given a fancy title immediately start believing they earned it solo. Her expression grew more serious. We've encountered chosen ones, before who let the power go to their heads. You've done the opposite, working harder to prove yourself worthy of something you didn't ask for. Before Naruto could respond, a sudden tremor ran through the Animarium, subtle but unmistakable, like a shiver passing through a living body. Princess Shayla's singing stopped abruptly, replaced by a single clear call that carried across the temple grounds. The boundary weakens. Taylor was on her feet instantly, professional alertness replacing casual conversation. Another breach. Naruto rose beside her, already extending his senses through the connection established by the Animarium Sage Morpher. Something's different this time. The energy signature feels familiar. Together they descended rapidly from the spire, using Ranger-enhanced agility and shinobi techniques respectively. Princess Shayla met them at the base of the temple steps, her expression urgent but not panicked. The dimensional boundary is fluctuating near the sacred pool, she reported. Already moving in that direction. Not deteriorating like Orochimaru's intrusion, but being purposefully traversed. Someone's trying to cross over. Taylor confirmed, activating her communicator. I'll alert the others. Wait, Naruto interrupted, his expression shifting as he concentrated on the energy signature. I recognize that chakra pattern. His eyes widened with sudden certainty. It's Hinata. One of yours? Taylor asked sharply, hand still on her communicator. Yes, Hinata Hyuga. She's from my village, one of our most skilled trackers. Naruto was already moving, headed toward the sacred pool with urgent strides. She must have found the transition point I used. Princess Shayla and Taylor exchanged glances before following, the princess's expression concerned. If shinobi can deliberately cross dimensions, the boundary may be more compromised than we realized. They reached the sacred pool, a perfect circular body of water led within ancient stone formations, just as the surface began to shimmer with unnatural light. Not the purple corruption of Orochimaru's breach, but a pearlescent glow that pulsed with increasingly intense rhythm. Should we be concerned? Taylor asked, positioning herself protectively near Princess Shayla despite Naruto's assurances. Hinata's not a threat, Naruto replied confidently, approaching the pool's edge. She's one of the most compassionate people I know. If she's coming through, it's because she's worried about me or has important information. The pool's surface tensed like a membrane stretched to breaking point. then parted in a column of light that shot skyward. Within this radiance, a silhouette gradually materialized, a slender female figure descending gently to touch the water's surface without breaking it. As the light faded, Hinata Hyuga stood upon the sacred pool, her pale eyes wide with wonder at her surroundings. She wore standard Konoha Junin attire adapted for tracking missions. Her long indigo hair pulled back in a practical braid. The veins around her eyes were prominently visible, Byakugan active to navigate the dimensional crossing. Naruto-kun, she exclaimed with evident relief, deactivating her bloodline limit as she stepped from water to stone in a single fluid movement. I finally found you, Hinata. Naruto responded with genuine joy, moving forward to meet her. How did you? His question was cut short as Hinata unexpectedly embraced him. A brief, tight hug before she stepped back, a faint blush coloring her cheeks despite years of growing confidence. Sorry, she murmured, composure quickly returning. It's been a stressful week of tracking. When you disappeared without trace, everyone was concerned. Taylor cleared her throat pointedly, reminding them of her presence. Hinata turned, finally noticing the others, her posture immediately shifting to alert wariness as she assessed potential threats with trained precision. It's okay, Naruto assured her quickly. These are allies. Taylor Earhardt, Yellow Wild Force Ranger, and Princess Shayla, guardian of the Animarium, the realm we're currently in. Hinata bowed respectfully in traditional shinobi greeting. Hinata Hyuga of Konohagakure. I apologize for my unannounced arrival, but circumstances in our world required urgent contact. Princess Shayla stepped forward, returning the bow with her own graceful inclination. You are welcome to the Animarium, Hinata Hyuga. Any friend of the Wild Zord King is welcome here. Hinata's pale eyes widened slightly as she turned to Naruto. Wild Zord King. Ah, yeah. Naruto rubbed the back of his head with characteristic embarrassment. That's a recent development. It's complicated. We should move this reunion to the temple. Taylor interjected pragmatically. If she crossed dimensions deliberately, I'm assuming she has information we all need to hear. Hinata nodded, her expression growing serious. Yes, Orochimaru's activities have escalated significantly. Kakashi-sensei and Shikamaru sent me to establish contact and coordinate our response to what appears to be a two-world threat. As they walked toward the temple, Hinata described her tracking process, her specialized Byakugan techniques allowing her to perceive the dimensional distortion Naruto's crossing had created. Taylor listened with professional interest, asking occasional clarifying questions about shinobi sensory capabilities. Your eyes allow you to see chakra networks directly? She asked, tactician mind already considering strategic applications. Yes, Hinata confirmed. The Byakugan perceives chakra flow, internal physical systems, and with sufficient training, more subtle energy patterns including dimensional distortions. Could you detect these corruption devices Orochimaru's been placing before they activate? Taylor pressed, her question pointed but not aggressive. Hinata considered this thoughtfully. Possibly, if I examined a deactivated sample first to understand its specific energy signature. We have one, Taylor noted with satisfaction. Recovered from the Elephant Zord 3 days ago. Alyssa's been studying it, but having someone who can literally see energy flow would accelerate our understanding considerably. Princess Shayla, who had been quietly observing the interaction, suddenly paused. Her head tilting as though listening to something beyond normal hearing range. The Wild Zords are responding to her presence, she observed with surprise. Particularly the White Tiger Zord. It's quite unusual for them to take such immediate interest in a visitor. Hinata glanced at Naruto questioningly. He smiled reassuringly. The Wild Zords are this world's guardian spirits, similar to our summoning animals. But more integrated with their ecosystem. They form bonds with specific humans who can channel their power. Like the Biju partnerships in our world, Hinata intuited, demonstrating the quick analytical thinking that had elevated her to Junin rank despite her gentle demeanor. Similar but different, Naruto clarified. Less conversational, more instinctual. Though as the apparent king, I'm still figuring out the specifics myself. They reached the temple's main chamber, a circular room with crystal columns supporting a dome ceiling that somehow captured and amplified starlight. The space resonated with subtle energy, responding to their presence with soft illumination that brightened as they entered. I'll wake the others, Taylor stated, moving toward AC. A communication panel near the chamber's entrance. Your information should be shared with the full team. While Taylor summoned the remaining Rangers, Princess Shayla invited Hinata to sit at the circular stone table dominating the chamber's center. Naruto joined them, noticing how the Animarium Sage Morpher pulsed more actively in Hinata's presence. Your crossing has changed the dimensional boundary, Princess Shayla observed, her perceptive gaze studying Hinata with gentle scrutiny. Unlike Orochimaru's forced breach, your transition seems to have harmonized with the natural connection points. Hinata nodded, unsurprised. I developed a technique specifically designed to follow Naruto-kun's chakra signature without damaging the dimensional fabric. Sakura helped stabilize the process with her precise chakra control. Sakura's involved too, Naruto asked, leaning forward with increased interest. Is she okay? What about the others? Everyone is safe for now, Hinata assured him. But concerned, especially after we confirmed Orochimaru's involvement in the dimensional disturbances. Before she could elaborate, the remaining Rangers arrived, Cole, Max, Danny, and Alyssa entering together. Their expressions mixing curiosity with professional alertness. Taylor had evidently briefed them on the basics, as they showed surprise but not alarm at Hinata's presence. Cole stepped forward first, his open nature evident as he extended his hand in greeting. Cole Evans, Red Wild Force Ranger. Welcome to our world. Hinata took his hand with a polite smile, her response formal but genuine. Thank you for assisting Naruto-kun. Your hospitality honors Konoha. The others introduced themselves in turn. Max's energetic enthusiasm, Danny's quiet courtesy, and Alyssa's academic curiosity creating distinct first impressions. Hinata acknowledged each with the careful observation that characterized her approach to new situations. Once introductions concluded, Taylor brought them to the matter at hand. You mentioned escalating activities from Orochimaru. What exactly is happening in your world? Hinata's expression grew grave. 3 major developments. First, Orochimaru has abandoned his research facilities in Sound Country. All equipment related to his conventional experiments was left behind, suggesting a complete shift in focus. Meaning he's fully committed to this dimensional project. Naruto interpreted, familiar with Orochimaru's obsessive research patterns. He never abandons viable research unless something more promising demands his complete attention. Hinata nodded. Second, he's recruited approximately 30 former Anbu operatives, elite shinobi who served under Danzo before his death. These individuals have specialized training in assassination, infiltration, and forbidden techniques. That explains how someone could approach a wild Zord undetected, Taylor noted grimly. Specialized infiltrators with shinobi training would have capability. Our defenses weren't designed to counter. The third development is most concerning, Hinata continued. Kakashi-sensei traced unusual energy signatures to 7 locations forming a perfect heptagon around Fire Country. Each site contains what appears to be a miniature version of the dimensional breach Orochimaru used to enter your world. Princess Shayla leaned forward, her serene expression giving way to evident concern. 7 points in geometric formation. It resembles the ancient convergence rituals described in our oldest texts. A ritual for what purpose? Danny asked, speaking for the first time. His typically quiet voice carrying unexpected authority when discussing potential threats to the natural world. The texts aren't specific, Princess Shayla admitted. Lee warned that geometric formations of dimensional breaches can create resonance effects, potentially weakening the structural integrity of the boundary between worlds. Alyssa, who had been thoughtfully silent, suddenly made a connection. Like harmonics in physics, if you vibrate something at precisely the right frequency, you can shatter it regardless of its strength. Exactly, Hinata confirmed. Shikamaru theorized something similar based on the positioning of the devices. If activated simultaneously, they could potentially create a much larger breach than anything Orochimaru could generate individually. The strategic implications hung heavily in the chamber. If Orochimaru could create large-scale dimensional breaches at will, containing the threat would become exponentially more difficult. We need to coordinate defense on both sides, Taylor stated, tactician mind already formulating response plans. Disable the devices in your world while strengthening boundaries in ours. Cole nodded in agreement. And we need better understanding of these hybrid technologies. Alyssa, what have you discovered from the corruption device? The White Ranger leaned forward, her academic background evident in her systematic explanation. It's genuinely revolutionary technology, a perfect fusion of biological components from the shinobi world and org essence from ours. The central Kant raw mechanism uses crystallized negative emotions, standard org methodology, but channels it through what appears to be modified cursed seal matrices derived from Orochimaru's research. Could I examine it? Hinata requested. My Byakugan might reveal operational mechanics invisible to conventional analysis. Alyssa nodded eagerly. I was hoping you'd offer. The containment case is in my research area. Naruto, who had been processing the implications of Hinata's report, turned to Princess Shayla. You mentioned ancient texts about convergence points. Could they contain information about these 7-point formations? Possibly. The princess acknowledged. Though most records from that era were lost during the original separation of the Animarium from Earth. What remains is fragmentary at best. We should split into teams. Taylor suggested with practical efficiency. Alyssa and Hinata can analyze the corruption device. Princess Shayla and Naruto should review the ancient texts for relevant information. The rest of us will strengthen perimeter security and prepare response protocols for potential breaches. Cole, as Red Ranger and field leader, considered the suggestion before nodding approval. Good plan. Max and I will coordinate with the Wild Zords to establish an early warning network. Danny, you and Taylor handled defensive preparations. As the meeting concluded the Rangers dispersed to their assigned tasks. Naruto lingered with Hinata, finally able to speak more personally. I'm sorry for disappearing like that, he began, genuine regret in his voice. It wasn't intentional. I was investigating an anomaly during Sage training and got pulled through before I could send any warning. Hinata shook her head, dismissing his apology with a gentle smile. We figured it was something like that. You've never been one for disappearing without good reason. Her smile faltered slightly. Though I will admit, tracking you across dimensions was a new challenge, even for the Byakugan. I'm glad you found me, Naruto said with quiet sincerity. Having someone from home here makes everything feel less disconnected. Hinata's pale eyes studied him with perceptiveness that had always seen beneath his outward demeanor. You've changed somewhat, she observed softly. There's a different quality to your chakra, it's harmonized with this world's energy. Naruto glanced down at the Animarium Sage Morpher on his wrist. Yeah, that happened pretty much immediately. This place responds to me differently than our world does. The Wild Zords recognized something in me that apparently makes me their king. He still spoke the title with slight discomfort, unaccustomed to such formal designation. It suits you, Hinata said with surprising firmness. When Naruto looked up questioningly, she continued with quiet certainty. Leadership has always been your natural state, Naruto-kun. People follow you because you understand their hearts, not because you demand their loyalty. That's what true kings do. Her simple faith in him, unchanged despite years and dimensions, touched something deep within Naruto. Before he could respond, Alyssa approached, politely clearing her throat. Sorry to interrupt, but whenever you're ready to examine the corruption device, she began. Hinata nodded, professional focus returning immediately. Of course, she turned back to Naruto briefly. We'll talk more later. Definitely, he assured her, watching as she departed with Alyssa, already discussing technical aspects of Byakugan perception and its applications for analyzing unfamiliar technology. Princess Shayla approached as they left, her expression thoughtful. Your friend brings both valuable skills and concerning news. The 7-point formati on suggests Orochimaru has deeper knowledge of dimensional mechanics than we initially assumed. That's Orochimaru, Naruto confirmed grimly. His brilliance has always been as dangerous as his ambition. If he's found ancient knowledge about dimensional boundaries, then we must find it as well, Princess Shayla concluded. The temple archives contain our oldest records, though many are in languages even I struggle to fully translate. They proceeded toward the archives, a circular chamber beneath the main temple, its walls lined with crystalline shelves containing scrolls, tablets, and artifacts of various ages. Unlike conventional libraries, this collection seemed alive, scrolls occasionally shifting position of their own accord, tablets emitting soft glows when certain combinations aligned. The entire system apparently self-organizing based on relevance to current needs. The archives respond to intention, Princess Shayla explained, noticing Naruto's fascinated observation. Quote, focus on our question about 7-point convergence formations, and the relevant materials should become more prominent. Naruto closed his eyes briefly, concentrating on the concept as instructed. When he opened them again, several scrolls on different shelves had begun glowing with subtle blue light, while a small stone tablet near the center pedestal pulsed with golden illumination. That's convenient, he remarked, impressed by the system's efficiency. Princess Shayla smiled. The Animarium adapts to serve its guardians. As acknowledged king, its response to you will be particularly strong. They gathered the illuminated materials and settled at the central stone table. Princess Shayla handled the ancient scrolls with practiced care, her familiarity with the archaic languages ident as she scanned their contents with efficient precision. This references 7 points of resonance, she translated from a particularly weathered document. When properly aligned with celestial patterns, they create what's described as a harmonic gateway between realms. Naruto studied the accompanying diagrams, geometric patterns surrounding stylized portals. Does it explain the purpose? Was this defensive or offensive technology? Princess Shayla's expression grew troubled as she continued reading. Neither, initially. According to this account, the original gateways were created cooperatively between realms for beneficial exchange of knowledge and resources. She turned the scroll carefully, revealing darker text on the reverse side. However, during what's called the first corruption, these same technologies were subverted to force unnatural convergence between worlds, forcing worlds to merge against their natural separation, Naruto interpreted. That sounds like something Orochimaru would attempt if he saw potential benefits. The consequences were catastrophic, Princess Shayla continued, her voice growing softer as she translated the ancient warnings. Unnatural convergence created instabilities in both realms, ecological systems collapsed, natural laws conflicted, and beings from both worlds suffered as reality itself became inconsistent. Golden pulsing tablet drew Naruto's attention next. Unlike the scrolls, which contained primarily text and diagrams, this artifact featured 3-dimensional relief carvings that shifted subtly as he examined them, showing different perspectives depending on viewing angle. What's this one? He asked, gesturing toward the tablet. Princess Shayla set aside the scroll to examine the artifact. This appears to be a key of sorts, or instructions. She traced the changing patterns with delicate fingers. It describes a counter formation, a geometric arrangement that can neutralize convergence points by establishing harmonic opposition. A way to shut down Orochimaru's 7-point formation, Naruto realized with growing excitement. Does it explain how to implement it? The princess's expression fell slightly. Only partially. It references something called the Harmonic Codex, apparently a more complete record of dimensional mechanics. But this tablet is just a reference, the codex itself. She hesitated, reluctance evident in her voice. What? Naruto prompted when she didn't continue. If it still exists, it would be in the Temple of Convergence, she finally answered. The neutral ground established between realms during the original cooperative period. The same temple Alyssa found references to, Naruto remembered, which we still don't know how to locate. Princess Shayla nodded soberly, finding it becomes increasingly urgent. If Orochimaru activates his 7-point formation before we can establish countermeasures. Their research was interrupted by an urgent communication from Taylor. Everyone to the main chamber immediately. We have a situation. Naruto and Princess Shayla exchanged concerned glances before hurrying from the archives, taking the most relevant scrolls and the golden tablet with them. They arrived in the main chamber to find the other rangers already gathered, expressions grim as they observed a holographic display projected from the central table. The image showed what appeared to be multiple purple energy signatures converging on the Animarium from different directions, at least a dozen distinct sources moving with coordinated precision through the outer defense perimeters. Breach? Naruto asked tersely, immediately assessing tactical implications. Taylor shook her head. Not dimensional, physical infiltration. Somehow they're masking their approach from the wild Zords, normal detection methods. Hinata, standing beside Alyssa, activated her Byakugan to study the energy signatures. Shinobi chakra patterns, she reported with professional detachment. but corrupted, similar to the device we examined, but integrated directly into their biological systems. Orochimaru's Anbu recruits, Naruto concluded grimly. He's modified them with org essence, creating hybrid operatives that can bypass conventional detection. Shadow ninjas, Cole named them, his usually open expression hardened with determination. How did they reach the Animarium without opening a visible portal? Alyssa stepped forward, indicating a diagram she and Hinata had been studying. The corruption device contained microscopic D-dimensional thinners, technology that creates pinpoint breaches too small for conventional detection but sufficient for individual passage when properly synchronized. Synchronized with what? Max asked, the youngest ranger clearly struggling to follow the technical explanation. With these, Hinata answered, holding up a small crystal shard recovered from the corruption device. Quantum entangled focus points. One half remains in our world, the other creates a corresponding exit point here. Microscopic portals that expand only briefly for transit, then collapse immediately after. Untraceable infiltration technology, Taylor summarized with professional grimness. And now we have at least 12 operatives approaching strategic points around the temple. They're after something specific, Danny observed quietly. Studying the approach patterns, their formation suggests targeted extraction rather than general attack. Naruto's eyes widened with sudden realization. The ancient records. If Orochimaru knows about the 7-point formation, he might also know about the countermeasures mentioned in these texts. He turned to Princess Shayla. What we were just reading might be exactly what they're after. The princess clutched the golden tablet more tightly, its pulsing illumination casting strange shadows across her troubled features. If they obtain information about the Harmonic Codex and the Temple of Convergence's location, then we defend it at all costs, Cole stated firmly. Rangers, prepare for morphed combat. These shadow ninjas have infiltrated our home. They leave on our terms, not theirs. Taylor immediately took charge of tactical deployment. Cole, Max, northern perimeter. Danny, Alyssa, eastern approach. Princess Shayla remains in the central sham. With the artifacts under my direct protection. She turned to Naruto and Hinata. You two take the western perimeter. Your shinobi training might give you insight into their tactics. Naruto nodded, turning to Hinata. Keep your Byakugan active. These hybrid operatives might have capabilities we've never encountered before. As the rangers dispersed to their assigned positions, Taylor activated the temple's defensive systems, ancient mechanisms humming to life as protective barriers materialized around critical areas. Princess Shayla moved to the central pedestal, placing the golden tablet ND scrolls within a specialized containment field designed to preserve fragile artifacts. Be careful, she urged as Naruto prepared to leave with Hinata. These shadow ninjas would have been formidable even before Orochimaru's modifications. With org essence augmenting their abilities. We'll be fine, Naruto assured her, his confident smile genuine despite the circumstances. Hinata and I have faced worse odds. The princess's expression softened briefly. I know you have. That's precisely why the Red Lion chose you. She hesitated, then added with quiet intensity, return safely, Naruto Uzumaki. The Animarium has only just found its king. It would be most distressed to lose him so soon. Something in her voice, a personal concern beneath the formal words, caught Naruto's attention. Before he could respond, Taylor's voice came through his communicator. Western perimeter breach. 3 infiltrators approaching your position, Naruto. On it, he confirmed, exchanging determined nods with Hinata before they sprinted toward the western temple boundary. They emerged onto a stone terrace overlooking stepped gardens that descended toward the wilder forests beyond. In daylight, the view would have been breathtaking. In darkness, it provided perfect approach coverage for infiltrators with stealth training. Can you see them? Naruto asked quietly, knowing Hinata's Byakugan could perceive far beyond normal vision. 3 signatures approaching through the third garden tier, she confirmed, veins around her eyes pronounced as she focused her bloodline ability. They're Chakra. A networks show significant alteration, purple corruption flowing alongside normal pathways. They're moving in standard Anbu diamond formation. Naruto considered their options. Standard Anbu tactics won't change just because they've been modified. They'll expect conventional defense patterns. So we do something unexpected, Hinata concluded, already understanding his thinking. Reversed positioning. With a shadow clone false front, Naruto agreed with a quick grin. Just like our mission in Grass Country. They moved with practiced coordination, Naruto creating shadow clones that too. Obvious defensive positions while the originals concealed themselves in counterintuitive locations that would confound standard Anbu approach protocols. The strategy, developed during joint missions years earlier, exploited ANBU's rigorous training against them, their very predictability becoming a weakness when facing opponents familiar with their methods. The shadow ninjas emerged from darkness with unnatural fluidity, their movements blending standard shinobi techniques with something altogether different. They wore modified Anbu armor tinted purple-black, their traditional porcelain moss. Replaced by face coverings that seemed partially organic, bone-like material that had grown over their features rather than being simply worn. Most disturbing was their movement, not entirely solid. Parts of their forms occasionally dissolving into purple mist before reconstituting, allowing them to pass through obstacles that should have impeded physical bodies. "That's new," Naruto muttered from his hidden position, observing as one infiltrator partially phased through a stone balustrade rather than vaulting it. The shadow ninjas paused, sensing the shadow clones but clearly detecting something amiss in their formation. They communicated through hand signals, standard Anbu code modified with unfamiliar additions. When they attacked, it was with coordinated precision, two engaging the shadow clones as distraction while the third circled to flank. Had Naruto and Hinata been where conventional tactics would place them, the maneuver might have succeeded. Instead, Hinata struck from an impossible angle, her gentle fist technique connecting with the flanking shadow ninja mid-phase. The impact disrupted the infiltrator's partial materialization, forcing complete physical cohesion as chakra points sealed under her precise strikes. "They can't phase while their chakra network is disrupted," she called to Naruto, already pivoting to address the next threat. Naruto engaged the remaining infiltrators directly, the Animarium Sage Morpher pulsing actively as he channeled its power without full transformation. Golden-red energy surrounded his hands, allowing his strikes to connect. Even when the shadow ninjas attempted to phase through his attacks, the wild Zord energy counters their phasing ability, he realized, pressing this advantage with increasing confidence. The shadow ninjas adjusted tactics immediately, recognizing the threat Hinata's Byakugan-guided strikes posed to their enhanced abilities. They produced weapons unlike any Naruto had encountered, short blades that pulsed with purple energy, seeming to cut through reality itself rather than merely physical matter. Dimensional shivs, Hinata identified, narrowly avoiding a strike that passed through the stone column behind her as though it were mist. Micro-breach technology weaponized. The fight intensified as both sides adapted to unfamiliar capabilities. The shadow ninjas demonstrated unsettling coordination. Their movements synchronized beyond normal teamwork, almost as though a single consciousness directed three bodies. Naruto activated the Animarium Sage Morpher fully, golden light enveloping him as the transformation completed. Wild access. The armor materialized around him, enhancing his natural abilities and providing protection against the dimensional weapons. The shadow ninjas paused momentarily, clearly reassessing the threat level. Something in Naruto's transformation had captured their full attention, recognition flashing through their corrupted chakra networks. "Primary target confirmed," one spoke, its voice distorted like multiple tones overlapping. "King of Wild Zords located. Secondary objective superseded." Their formation shifted instantly from infiltration to capture configuration, all three focusing exclusively on Naruto with renewed intensity, completely ignoring Hinata despite the threat she posed. "They're after you specifically," Hinata realized, using their fixation to position herself advantage Orochimaru. "Orochimaru must know about your new status." "Fantastic," Naruto replied dryly, deflecting a coordinated attack with his transformed state's enhanced capabilities. "I'm barely used to the title myself, and he's already sending specialized teams to collect me." Their communicators activated with Taylor's tense voice. "Status report, Western Perimeter. We have similar engagement at all entry points, 5 distinct teams attempting penetration." Engaged with 3 infiltrators, Naruto responded between defensive maneuvers. "They've identified me as primary target, appears capture rather than elimination as their objective." Same at North Perimeter, Cole confirmed through the communication network. They disengaged from direct conflict when Max and I appeared, focusing entirely on penetrating temple defenses instead. They're creating diversions, Taylor concluded sharply. The real target is inside, Princess Shayla and the artifacts. Naruto's blood ran cold at the implication. The infiltrators they were engaging weren't the main threat, merely distraction while other operatives breached central defenses. Hinata, he called, decision made instantly. Can you handle these three? She nodded once, already adjusting her stance for solo engagement. Go, I'll prevent pursuit. Trusting her capabilities completely, Naruto disengaged with a powerful repulsion technique that temporarily scattered the shadow ninjas, then sprinted toward the central temple. The Animarium Sage Ranger armor enhanced his speed beyond normal limits, landscape blurring around him as he pushed the transformation's capabilities to their maximum. His communicator crackled with urgent updates from other defensive positions, all rangers reporting similar diversionary tactics. The coordinated nature of the attack becoming increasingly apparent. The Shadow Ninjas had studied the Animarium's defenses thoroughly before making their move. Naruto reached the central chamber just as alarms blared throughout the temple complex. The massive stone doors leading to the chamber's interior had been breached, not by physical force but through localized D-dimensional phasing that left the material intact while creating temporary passages through reality itself. Inside, he found Taylor engaged with two shadow ninjas who moved with elite Anbu precision. Despite her ranger abilities and military training, their specialized shinobi techniques presented challenges she hadn't encountered before. She fought with impressive adaptability, her eagle sword, creating yellow energy arcs that temporarily disrupted their phasing capabilities, but each successful counter was met with increasingly complex attack patterns. More concerning was the third infiltrator, who had bypassed the immediate conflict entirely. This shadow ninja, larger than the others with distinctive command markings on its modified armor, had reached the central pedestal where Princess Shayla stood protectively before the containment field housing the ancient artifacts. Step aside, Guardian, the commander's multi-toned voice demanded. Our quarrel is not with you, only with the knowledge you protect. Princess Shayla's stance remained unwavering, her normally gentle demeanor replaced by the steel resolve of a being who had defended her realm for millennia. This knowledge is protected for good reason. Its misuse threatens both our worlds. The Shadow Ninja commander's hand transformed, fingers elongating into purple-black tendrils that writhed with unnatural purpose. Then we take it by force. You'll do no such thing, Naruto stated firmly, announcing his presence as he stepped through the breached doorway. The Animarium Sage Ranger armor gleamed in the chamber's crystalline light, the spiral sun emblem on his chest pulsing with golden energy that resonated with the artifacts in the containment field. The commander turned, corrupted eyes focusing on Naruto with disturbing intensity. The king arrives. Two objectives converge, most efficient. Taylor used the momentary distraction to dispatch one of her opponents with a precisely timed eagle sword strike. That disrupted its corrupted chakra network completely, causing the shadow ninja to dissolve into purple mist that dissipated harmlessly. About time you showed up, she called to Naruto, already engaging the remaining infiltrator with renewed confidence. These guys don't stay down easily. The commander assessed the changing tactical situation with cold calculation, then made a decision at demonstrated disturbing strategic flexibility. It abandoned its approach to Princess Shayla and the artifacts, instead focusing entirely on Naruto. Primary objective takes precedence, it stated flatly. The king's power will provide access to all secondary knowledge. Its attack came with blistering speed, far beyond what the other shadow ninjas had demonstrated. The commander's movements ended elite Anbu techniques with org-enhanced capabilities, creating combination attacks that would have overwhelmed most opponents. Naruto met the assault with the combined experience of years of high-stakes combat and his newly awakened Wild Zord connection. The Animarium Sage Ranger armor responded to his intentions almost instantaneously, enhancing his natural fighting style rather than imposing unfamiliar patterns. You're not the first modified puppet Orochimaru has sent after me, Naruto stated as he countered a particularly vicious strike sequence. And you're not taking anything or anyone from this temple. The commander's response was unexpected, not continued aggression but calculated assessment. Interesting. Your harmonization with Wild Zord energy exceeds theoretical parameters. The Master will find this data valuable. Before Naruto could respond, the Shadow Ninja's form began changing more dramatically, armor melting into its body as purple corruption spread throughout its system. The transformation was grotesque, more reminiscent of Orochimaru's forbidden techniques than standard org evolution. Biological recording module activated, it stated in increasingly distorted tones. Combat data transmission initiated. Taylor, having neutralized her second opponent, moved to support Naruto. It's some kind of reconnaissance unit, she warned. Gathering combat data for analysis. Princess Shayla stepped forward from the pedestal, her expression deeply troubled. It's worse than that. The corruption is spreading throughout its system, a deliberate self-destab. Illization to create a temporary dimensional rupture. The commander's transformation continued accelerating, limbs elongating unnaturally, face melting into amorphous purple mass that pulsated with increasing energy discharge. Its chakra network, now fully corrupted, began generating the distinctive frequency associated with dimensional breaches. Remote collection authorized, it announced as its form lost all human semblance. Dimensional inversion in 3, 2. Naruto acted instinctively, channeling power through the Animarium Sage Morpher into a containment technique. Wild Zord barrier. Golden energy erupted from his extended hands, forming a dome around the destabilizing Shadow Ninja commander. Taylor, get the princess and artifacts out now, he ordered, strain evident in his voice as he maintained the energy barrier against increasing pressure from within. Taylor hesitated only briefly before recognizing the necessity. She hurried to Princess Shayla, who quickly read the ancient tablet and scrolls before allowing herself to be escorted toward the secondary exit. Naruto, Princess Shayla began, clearly reluctant to leave him facing the threat alone. I've got this, he assured her with characteristic confidence despite the evident strain. Just get those artifacts secured. As they retreated, the corrupted commander reached critical instability, its foe collapsing inward before exploding outward in a controlled dimensional rupture. The inversion created a momentary portal, not to random space but to a specific location. For a brief instant, Naruto glimpsed a laboratory through the rupture, sterile white equipment surrounding a central observation platform where a familiar figure stood watching with calculating interest. Orochimaru's golden eyes met Naruto's across the dimensional gap, his thin lips curving into that unnervingly satisfied smile that had haunted many nightmares. Fascinating development, Naruto-kun, the Sannin observed casually, as though they were merely passing in a hallway rather than connecting across realities. The Wild Zords have chosen well, it seems. Whatever you're planning, Orochimaru, it won't work, Naruto stated firmly. Maintaining the containment barrier despite increasing difficulty. We know about the 7-point formation. Something flashed briefly in Orochimaru's expression, perhaps surprised that they'd discovered this information. Quickly masked by his usual calculated calm. Knowledge without context is merely trivia, Naruto-kun. The 7 points are merely preparation for something far more transformative. The rupture began destabilizing, the connection between dimensions flickering as the Shadow Ninja commander's form completely disintegrated, consumed by the very breach it had generated. Until our next meeting, Orochimaru stated with disturbing certainty. Do give my regards to Princess Shayla. Her ancestors would be most interested in our work. The portal collapsed completely as the containment barrier finally shattered, leaving Naruto alone in the damaged chamber with only the ominous parting words echoing in his mind. The communicator on his wrist activated. With multiple signals, Rangers reporting status from various defensive positions around the temple. The Shadow Ninjas had disengaged simultaneously across all fronts, disappearing as suddenly as they had arrived. Naruto, are you all right? Hinata's concerned voice came through clearly. The three here suddenly retreated without explanation. I'm fine, he assured her, deactivating the Ranger TRANS formation as fatigue caught up with him. They got what they came for. Combat data and confirmation of my status as Wild Zord King. Taylor and Princess Shayla returned cautiously, the Yellow Ranger scanning the chamber for remaining threats while the princess moved immediately to Naruto's side, concern evident in her expression. You contained a dimensional rupture through sheer will, she observed with quiet amazement. Even fully trained guardians couldn't manage such a feat without proper preparation. Naruto shrugged, though the effort had clearly drained him significantly. Didn't have much choice. Orochimaru was on the other side, watching everything through his commander's eyes. Taylor's expression hardened at this information. So this was a reconnaissance mission, gathering intelligence about our defenses and your capabilities. And delivering a message, Naruto added grimly, turning to Princess Shayla. He mentioned your ancestors specifically, said they would be interested in our work. Does that mean anything to you? The princess's normally serene features clouded with troubled contemplation. The original guardians who established the dimensional boundaries worked directly with beings from your world. If Orochimaru has discovered records of those interactions, then he knows things about the Temple of Convergence that we're still trying to piece together. Taylor concluded with tactical pragmatism. We need to find it before he does. The other rangers began arriving, reporting similar experiences across all defensive positions, coordinated dissing. Agement the moment the commander had established its dimensional link. Hinata joined them shortly after, immediately moving to Naruto's side to assess his condition with concerned scrutiny. You pushed yourself too hard. She chided gently, her Byakugan scanning his chakra network. The harmonic integration between your natural energy and this world's power creates unique strain patterns. I'm fine, Naruto assured her with a tired smile. Just need some rest. As the rangers gathered to assess damage and plan countermeasures, the implications of the night's events settled over them. The Hado ninjas had demonstrated capabilities that blended the worst aspects of both worlds, Anbu precision with Ord corruption, shinobi techniques with dimensional manipulation. They'll be back, Taylor stated what everyone already knew. Better prepared and with specific countermeasures for our defenses. Cole nodded in somber agreement. Then we need to be better prepared too. Understanding these hybrid technologies is our priority now. Princess Shayla approached the central pedestal, which had somehow remained undamaged despite the conflict around it. She placed her hand on its surface, losing her eyes briefly as though communicating with the temple itself. The Animarium senses growing disturbance in the dimensional boundary, she reported. Not just here, but throughout both realms. Orochimaru's 7-point formation is already affecting larger systems than we initially believed. Alyssa, who had been examining the dissipated remains of one shadow ninja with scientific curiosity, looked up with sudden realization. That's why they didn't need to take the artifacts physically. If the dimensional boundaries are already weakening, then finding the Temple of Convergence becomes easier for everyone. Naruto completed her thought. Because the natural concealment that's hidden it for millennia is failing along with other dimensional safeguards. The ancient tablet, still secure in its containment field, pulsed with brighter golden light as if responding to this conclusion. Princess Shayla turned toward it with renewed focus. The tablet is responding to dimensional fluctuations, she observed, carefully removing it from the field for closer examination. As she held it, the shifting patterns on its surface began moving more rapidly, eventually stabilizing into a configuration none of them had seen before. It's a map, Hinata realized, her Byakugan perceiving energy patterns invisible to others. The dimensional coordinates of the Temple of Convergence, encoded in energy signatures rather than physical locations. Princess Shayla studied the revealed pattern with growing excitement. You're right, these aren't physical directions because the temple exists between dimensions, neither fully in your world nor ours, but at the convergence point of both. Can you interpret the coordinates? Taylor asked, strategic mind immediately focusing on practical application. I believe so, Princess Shayla confirmed, but reaching the temple will require simultaneous approach from both dimensions, representatives from each realm arriving at precisely the same moment to unlock the entry point. Naruto exchanged meaningful glances with Hinata. So some of us need to return to the shinobi world to coordinate the approach from that side. Hinata nodded in understanding. Sakura and Kakashi-sensei are already monitoring the boundary points. With these coordinates, they could position themselves correctly while we approach from this side. A two-pronged mission, Taylor summarized. Already formulating team compositions. One group from each world, converging on the temple location simultaneously. I'll go back with Hinata, Naruto decided after brief consideration. I need to update Kakashi-sensei on everything we've learned, and my connection to both worlds might help stabilize the crossing. Princess Shayla's expression flickered briefly, with what might have been disappointment before returning to its usual serene determination. The wild Zords will maintain vigilance in your absence, but do not delay your return longer than necessary. As king, your presence strengthens the Animarium's natural defenses. Cole stepped forward with a supportive hand on Naruto's shoulder. Take what you need for the mission. The rest of us will continue fortifying defenses here and preparing for your return journey to the temple. As the meeting concluded and recovery operations began throughout the temple, Naruto found himself momentarily alone. Nay, with Princess Shayla near the sacred pool, the natural crossing point where Hinata had arrived and where they would depart the following morning. Thank you for protecting the artifacts, he said quietly. Standing against that shadow ninja commander without ranger powers took serious courage. Princess Shayla's smile held gentle humor. I may lack combat training, but I've been guardian of the Animarium for 3 millennia. One develops certain fortitude over such time. Moonlight played across the pool's surface, casting rippling patterns that emphasized the otherworldly beauty of the setting. For a moment, neither spoke, simply absorbing the temporary peace after chaotic battle. Orochimaru's interest in your ancestors concerns me, Naruto finally said, watching her expression carefully. What possible connection could he have discovered? The princess sighed softly, her gaze turning toward the distant mountains where the Red Lion made its sanctuary. The original guard, Eons who established the dimensional boundaries, were my direct ancestors, beings who existed simultaneously in multiple realms before the formal separation. They possessed knowledge of cosmic mechanics. That has been largely lost over millennia. And you think Orochimaru has found some of this knowledge, Naruto concluded, the implications troubling. Records were created in both worlds, Princess Shayla confirmed. Most were secured in the Temple of Convergence, but some fragments may have remained in your world, hidden or forgotten until someone with sufficient insight recognized their significance. Someone like Orochimaru, Naruto muttered grimly, who's spent decades collecting forbidden knowledge from every possible source. Princess Shayla turned to face him directly, moonlight illuminating her features with ethereal clarity. Be careful in your world, Naruto. As the acknowledged king of wild Zords, you now carry energy signatures that Orochimaru will be able to track more easily. You represent both a threat to his plans and a potential resource he would dearly love to study. The concern in her voice carried personal warmth beyond mere strategic caution. Naruto found himself responding to that unspoken emotion with reassuring confidence. I'll be careful, he promised. And I'll come back. We'll find the temple together and figure out how to stop whatever Orochimaru's planning. Their eyes held for a moment longer than strictly necessary, mutual understanding deepening in ways neither fully articulated. Then Princess Shayla nodded once, composure returning as she stepped back. Dawn will arrive soon. You should rest before your journey. She turned to leave, then paused, adding with formal dignity that didn't quite mask the sentiment beneath. The Animarium will await the return of its king. As she departed, Naruto remained by the sacred pool, watching moonlight dance across its mysterious surface. The Animarium sage morpher pulsed gently against his wrist, its rhythm somehow comforting despite the challenges that lay ahead. Tomorrow would bring a return to familiar territory, yet under completely changed circumstances. No longer just Naruto Uzumaki of Konohagakure, but the king of wild Zords with responsibilities to 2 worlds now threatened by Orochimaru's dimensional ambitions. The water rippled suddenly, though no wind disturbed its surface. For an instant, Naruto glimpsed what appeared to be simultaneous reflections of both worlds, Konoha's forests and the Animarium's landscapes overlapping in impossible harmony. The vision lasted only moments before settling back to normal reflection, but its meaning seemed clear. The boundaries between worlds were indeed weakening. What had begun as accidental discovery was rapidly becoming existential threat. We'll stop him, Naruto promised quietly to both reflections. Whatever it takes. Chapter 3 End. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.